Board games, board games is what I'm talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And over here, it's the person who is not hid. They are the person known as David. David Murcutt is a teacher normally. But today, David is going to be talking to me because it is today a holiday, which maybe makes David say hooray.
Hooray!
And we are here to talk about board games. And other things might be integrated all the same. Board games, it's what I'm talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. Hello, Rob. As always, it is super lovely to see you. And this is episode 334 of Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. I just realized actually a few days ago that, oh my gosh, it's going to be episode 333. Maybe I should do something different because, all the freeze was yesterday, but I didn't really do anything special for it. But, I do something special every 100 episodes anyway. And so that's enough. But, we're doing something special today because every time I have a new guest, it's like, I'm meeting this wonderful person and bonjour, hello, Mike de Grief. It's lovely to
comment ça
see
va?
Do you have any French heritage, or is it this just yours?
I wish I did. I really wish I did. I think I get a lot of, hey, you look European, which, hey, that's technically true, right? But I don't have any other languages. I wish I did. I've tried Duolingo, all these things, and failed miserably. Someday, it's on my list of life, is to at least speak some very basic continental language. We'll get there.
Whether that's German or Italian or Spanish or French, it doesn't matter. Just some other language.
I'm not too fussed. I think French, because of the look and the moustache, definitely seems to be where I'm heading, and we'll get there eventually. But equally, Spanish I've been doing a lot of recently as well.
I don't know what Triple Nelson means at all. Are you familiar with this term?
Cricket, some cricket.
Let's move on.
I don't know cricket. I wish I did.
Hello, Ross. And I guess Ross has got to know especially early. Thank you so much, Ross. Because
the earliest I've ever seen Russell awake, so this must be a special occasion.
Hey, it's all to support you. The other half. And hello, Nicholas. It is lovely to see you as well. And so, let's talk a wee bit about, this, because David, I have met you before. We've met at a couple of conventions. We've had a fleeting chat. Because, you are half of For Chits and Giggles. And even though Russ is doing like the live streaming stuff, so you're kind of the background a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think half. I don't know if I'm half. I'd probably say I'm about a 12th, maybe, because of the amount of effort that Russell puts in to keep him For Chits and Giggles going. I'm just one small little piece. And obviously, For Chits and Giggles was started many moons ago, with myself, with Ben, and with Russell as well. And obviously, Ben's now in Australia, so he doesn't get involved much.
Australian Ben, who did
Australian Ben
with the arts.
Oh, it's incredible! His Catan board. If you haven't seen it yet, it's worth checking out on the For Chits and Giggles Twitch page. It's a beautiful thing. And so, we catch up with him every now and again. And obviously, I'm backgroundy and I still get to play with Russell, obviously, a lot, as we're both still in London. Hooray! So, it's been really, really nice to be involved as much as possible. But I cannot take the credit for the amount of effort and energy Russell's been putting into Chits and Giggles.
100%. And you are not only that person, you're not only like 112 or whatever amount you want to say For Chits and Giggles. You are, your own individual. And I've never had an extended chat with you. You're a teacher, you're an educator. You've used RPGs in the classroom, you've used board games in the classroom, and I'm really interested to chat to you. And today we're going to talk about early memories, like it says there, life, games, education, and whatever.
Lovely.
And so, apparently Rob says, in English cricket, 111 is considered a bad luck score and is called a Nelson for reasons. I feel like it feels like something to be I might look into that history later on, but
I mean, I need to know why. But why a Nelson?
I don't feel the need to. Do you have any triskaidekaphobia, David?
I don't even know what that is, so no. Maybe not. Is that the little holes?
No, triskaidekaphobia. It's the fear of the number 13.
Oh no, I quite enjoy the number 13. So the opposite of a phobia. I seek it out.
I mean, yeah, like there's so many places where they just skip floor 13 in hotels. Like it's so pervasive. It's like, why is this? It's just like messing up with everyone, and it's not a fun thing. Like, yeah, Rob trolling as always.
There he is. Glorious. Yeah. No, it's a strange thing, 13. I think there's something about it. Maybe it is the fact that it's a little bit hard done by that I quite like it. And so I've often been drawn towards the number 13 for whatever reasons. I don't feel like it's an unlucky number. And if it was, I'm all for it because, hey, you can't have a little luck without a little unluck too.
Boom. You know what? I was born on the 13th.
Hey, there we are.
I was born on the Friday the 13th. True story.
See, this is why we should celebrate that day. Especially celebrate it.
So let's move on and let's talk about who you are right now, what's been happening in your life. Let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, yeah, recent highlights. Walking in the woods has been an absolute treat recently. We're very lucky. We're quite close to Claybury Forest, which is an ancient wood not too far from our little flat in East London. I think we're as far east as you can get in London before you're pretty much Essex. I'm going to say we're in Essex, why not? But because of that, we get the lovely Essex countryside. And so, yeah, this ancient forest is a right treat. And there's currently wild garlic growing. It's just started sprouting in the woods. And so we've been swooping over there, picking a bit of that and turning it into our own little pesto. So I'm enjoying that. I think that's illegal, but I'm getting away with it so far. I don't think you're allowed to actually pick wild plants and turn them into food. But no one stopped me yet, so I'll keep on going. It's foraging, right? I think it's okay.
Surely that is... How can foraging be illegal?
I don't know. Someone told me off once about it, and I've always felt.
I mean, if it's on someone else's land, I can totally understand that because maybe you're denying it from someone.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that on Saturday we went out for a walk in Pollock Country Park. There were a few more people there than we'd like, but it's a very strong tradition that you need to go for a picnic. So we found a place in the middle of the woods on these tree trunks, and the 4 members of this household facing against each other, not facing off, going, well, you know, just sitting around each other and enjoying some, you know, wee bits that we'd taken with us. And then as we were walking around, we saw a family that had taken off all these daffodils, and my mum said, oh, look, they're plucking the daffodils. That's not good. And then I noticed that not only were they holding 1 or 2 each, but they also had a bag full of them. And it's like, wow, these daffodils had, you know, been planted clearly for people to enjoy in the park. And that feels really off to me because, you know, someone's planted them there, and I know, okay, maybe they propagate, maybe if you take one, it doesn't really matter. But if everyone does that, you know, yeah, it just feels quite inconsiderate. Whereas if you're foraging for food, if it depends how off the beaten path it is. Do you know what I mean? Like if you go, extreme example, if you're going on to farmers' fields and saying, hey, you know what, these strawberries look quite nice, and then you start helping yourself to their strawberries, well, that's really not cool. But yeah, maybe it's illegal to now.
Oh yeah, that's me now. They're coming for me now.
But it's all a judgment call. I'm not going to judge it too harshly, but yeah, it's all about being mindful for what you leave for other people, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I recommend it. If anyone's near to Claybury Woods, it's definitely worth getting down there. I'm now going to get other people to go and forage as well, because there's a lot of it. There's a crazy amount of wild garlic there. And again, if you go off the track, it is delicious. You can literally pick it. It's more like leaves, not actually, I don't think it's actual garlic, but it tastes like garlic and it smells like garlic. So I'm recommending you go and make a salad with some wild garlic if you can. How did we get here? It's happened.
Okay, so the question becomes, does wild garlic taste different to the garlic that I would buy in a supermarket?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's much more kind of spicy, I think.
Ooh.
But it is
Peppery.
delicious. I mean, because it's a leaf, not the garlic kind of cloves. It has this complete different texture as well that you can obviously unlock as you bite into it. And it is something special. It really is. I've never had it before
wild
until I
garlic.
found
You're
it.
not talking about the bulbs. You're talking about the leaf of the plant.
Yeah, so it's the leaf. That's why I don't think it's actually part of the garlic family, but it has this nickname of wild garlic because it just has the flavour and the smell of garlic. And you'll be walking through the woods, and if you brush just a little bit across a few of these leaves, the smell of garlic will just erupt through the woods, and it is something else. So having that kind of sensory experience out in the woods, which is already a magical place, as I'm sure everyone feels similarly, but to then have that explosion of smell as well is something else. There we are, bit of wild garlic and your Jersey potatoes. It's the way to do it. Recommendations. We get a whole cookbook going here, right?
That does sound lovely. And hello, Scott. It is lovely to have you part of the chat as always. And I'm going to actually show. This looks like a really good website. I'm going to paste this thing. So, whoops, So you will see it on all the channels. And yeah, we've got something from Rob where it says, never eat anything unless you're 100% sure it's safe. Nice. And the rules we teach only apply in the UK. And yeah, there's some sorts of picking limits, some sorts of countryside acts.
Oh,
yeah, okay, so
good to know.
This feels like definitely something to read through, David.
Oh yeah, I'm going to have a look at that. Because who knows, I might be poisoning myself slowly with wild garlic, and I wouldn't even know.
What has just been announced? Basically, we're just talking about picking up garlic and whether you're allowed to do it in the UK or not.
To the stream.
And if you're not sure, then Rob suggests check out this link.
The foraging code. Beautiful. Well, I should have checked this years ago, but that's fascinating stuff.
It's all good. So if anyone else has any recent highlights that you want to share, then please let us know. What have you been up to? I myself, yesterday, what did I do? I had I was meant to chat to a friend on WhatsApp, but then that didn't happen because of technical problems, because my phone is just overly full. So it's gotten to the point where WhatsApp just won't open sometimes unless I delete a couple of things, if you know what I mean. Which is a bit frustrating. I think I need to get a cable to connect it to my computer. My computer, for those who don't know, doesn't have a USB slot, which is pretty annoying.
Oh, no.
So I need to get like all these things to convert USB to non-USB. And it's like a wee micro USB. And anyway, so I need to get all the photos off so I can start using WhatsApp properly again. Anyway, I ended up yesterday, if you didn't watch my stream, just to summarize what happened, I think this is a good book, but I don't think there's enough completion in it. This is a great book, but you can't buy it anymore. But yeah, Sam and Fuzzy is basically my favorite webcomic ever, I've decided. And after that, I just ended up reading on. We've got Cartoon Coup by Ryan Estrada, who's a really talented cartoonist. And I decided that understanding comics is one of my favorite things ever. Like, as far as mass-produced things in my lifetime go, I think that this is in my joint top two. Understanding comics and Belleville Rendezvous, I have decided they are my joint first favorite mass-produced thing ever.
Amazing. I've been exploring the comics again recently, but I think not as indie as you're going, but I need to check out more of the indie scene. I've been reading Mouse Guard again recently, which I don't know if you've checked out, but it's a beautiful, beautiful comic about tiny little mice, a little mice fantasy. And it is just the sweetest thing, so beautifully illustrated as well. Oh yeah, that is a good idea.
Yep,
I always get lost. This is something I need to practice.
Reminder every 37 minutes to do a wee stretch. It doesn't mean we necessarily break the conversation, just a wee reminder to do a wee stretch.
I keep seeing those.
I have not checked Mouse Guard, but I have heard lots of good things about it. Thanks for lurking, Rob. And Mike DeGrief says we could go potentially chasing vampires with all this garlic.
This is a good idea. I wonder if the rule still applies. Is it the smell and taste of garlic the vampire sphere, or the cloves themselves? I mean, there's another conversation right there to be had.
But one thing I did do yesterday, other than reading lots of Sam and Fuzzy, and I'm going to admit, I read, there's many years of material here. There's like thousands of pages. Honestly, best webcomic, shouts out to it. I ended up reading a bunch while I was waiting for this call, then cooking, a bunch of roast potatoes and stuff. And there was also a bit of lamb, which we all ate. And everyone's always complimentary of my roast potatoes. I'm quite proud. I do good roast potatoes. The trick is just exactly how much you boil them before putting them into the oven, and getting a nice bit of smearing of oil on it, rubbing it with your hands to make sure that it's evenly coated, doing it with a wee bit of love. And if it's, just a wee bit rough, when you make sure you shake the pot to roughen up the edges, all the wee tips. Anyway,
delightful.
After dinner, we played Cluedo, and I had not played this for decades, probably. And I was actually really surprised that it's actually, in my mind, genuinely a good game. Have you played this recently?
Not recently, no. I'm similarly to most, I suppose. It was definitely a good childhood game, and lots of Cluedo around the family table, but not for many, many years.
I mean, for me, it's one of those things like Trivial Pursuit, Risk, Monopoly, Cluedo. It's parts of that big family that, okay, a lot of people have played this. And Monopoly, Risk, for me, it goes on a bit too long. That's my issue with it. Risk, for me, if I don't know the answer, I just feel frustrated. And that's my issue with it. It's not like, I prefer something like Wits and Wagers, or even...
Oh, yeah. Have you ever finished a game of Risk? Because I think that's quite a rare club to be in. World domination.
We definitely finish some games. We went on holidays and we had epic games of Risk, where it turns out to be like one of my parents, like the other parents wasn't really playing against maybe four of us, all four children saying, okay, you know what, we're going to, let's all team up. But it was
take them down. See, the thing with Risk I find that's interesting is that there's two kind of ways to play, it seems. I think there's in the rulebook as well. There's obviously you kind of complete your objectives, which is how you ultimately would normally win, or there is the world domination mode, which is where you have to take up the entire planet with your little soldiers. And I've only ever played that once in Romania, I think it was, in a place called Brasov, where we were staying in a hostel, and we obviously had like 4 hours to kill. I'm like, okay, it's time. The only time we'll ever play this game to world domination levels. And it was glorious, but that was it. I think I felt like I completed Risk and never needed to play Risk again. Whereas Cluedo, yeah, I would go back to Cluedo, because I think it's that sort of secret identity thing that is quite popular still in modern board games. And I'm intrigued to see how it feels now. I
mean, there was definitely something nice about it, and I want to... There's a slight issue. If you know two of the things, and then someone to the left of you says, okay, this is it, and then they say, oh yeah, I was right, and then they were actually wrong, but then they lay it on the table, and then you see it accidentally, then you've got to kind of say, look, I knew two of the things, but I can actually see what it is now. I didn't know the location, but I can't... Unseeing that isn't fun to me. But we were like, okay, now we all know it. Parents were like, okay, we know things that we would do differently next time. I knew things that I would do differently next time with the notes keeping, because it's not just about remember. There's actually a lot that you can deduce from the notes keeping. I think there's actually a lot to it, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing it again. We'll play it again tonight, once or twice, and this is with my family. I should bear in mind that my parents are very against learning new games. If it were down to one of them, we would just play Rummy every single day, but two of us, basically the two children, might be a bit sick of Rummy, I'm not going to lie. And the other parents is kind of, yeah, I'll play whatever, I just like playing games, which is actually really lovely. And the other parents would be happy to play backgammon, play two-player games, play whatever, as long just interaction. But anyway, let's kind of move on. And if you've got any recent highlights, you've had your time, but now is the time for the questionably quick questions. Are you ready to put David under the spotlight for the questionably quick questions?
Oh my gosh, here we go.
So the first question, we start off easy. And anyone, feel free to chime in. First question, what time is it? Where exactly are you?
Oh gosh, it's 21 minutes past 10 and I am in East London / Essex.
I like the way you describe that. And for me, of course, it is the same time, and I am in Glasgow. Next question, wooden meeples or plastic figurines?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's something about I find it difficult to even answer that now. I had a long time in my life. It's meant to be quick, isn't it? And I can't give you a quick answer.
Questionably quick.
Questionably quick. Well, I think I had a lot of my life, which, much like many others, I think I started collecting figurines. Star Wars was a massive part of my childhood, particularly, and having those. We used to do boot sale adventures where we would go to the local boot sales and just find this treasure in the back of a box for 50p, some big Fortuna action figure to add to our collection. And so a big part of my childhood is obviously all of these figures, which still live in my parents' attic just down the road. So I have to go there. But the wooden meeple, I don't know. I don't know if the wooden meeple's day is done in some ways, because after seeing the kind of item meeples and those sort of things that are slowly appearing and what we're doing with the meeple now, I'm kind of intrigued to see what comes next. But yes, there is something about holding the wooden meeple I still enjoy. But I think it's going to have to be plastic figures. That's what I'm going to go for.
Wow. Okay. That is fair enough. So we've got a two-part question. Which is better, chitting or giggling? And Ross asks, what even is chitting?
Well, we had a definition. We actually had this sit down when For Chits and Giggles first started, with us all having a round table meeting about the definition of chitting and giggling. And obviously, the chits part of our channel was meant to be the kind of rules, explanations, the kind of the serious business of getting information out there. And that might be just what's going on, news in the board gaming world, or potentially the rules to how to play a game. The giggling was the fun bit, you know, the games, the enjoying the occasion, the social aspect of gaming together. So there are two definitions for those. So for me, the giggling is the important bit as opposed to the chits part. But you need the chits to have the giggles sometimes.
Because the rules framework makes it easy. You know what you're doing, and sometimes that provides like a safe environment to just have those giggles. It's a good one. Okay, next question: books or podcasts?
All other books. That one, I love a podcast, but there's still something for me about holding a book. I travel quite a ways into London, so it's about an hour and 20 minutes commute that I have to do most days. So for me,
oh yes, of course, because you are a vital person. You still
So you
are actually going into schools these days.
4 weeks ago we were back in, so because of that, and I'd missed actually, because we were home learning for quite a large chunk of it last year especially. I'd missed that time to have just a good read, and I still love an actual book. I don't really go in for Kindles or anything like that. I just can't get on with them.
Any particular genre? Do you read fiction, non-fiction? What's the last book you read?
I dabble in a bit of both. I'm reading the Gilded Ones at the moment, which is a kind of fantasy story. It's really, really good. I haven't finished that one yet, but equally I bounce between a bit of fiction and non-fiction. I just finished reading Jurassic Park and the Lost World again, because we had a little mini book club with me and some of the other people at work, and I really fancied going in and having another go. I'd read it when I was a child, or tried to read when I was a child, and fell in love with Jurassic Park then. And I remember the first line of that book so vividly. The rain came down in drenching sheets, and I loved that first line, but I couldn't get into the book because it is quite chunky for someone who was like 11 at the time when Jurassic Park came out. So I just had to put it down for about 20 years and come back to it. And I'm so glad I did, because it's like having all the bonus features of your favorite movie unlocked when you read a book like that. It's just all of the different paths that the characters take, all the what could have been. So I love that, and I've just then I read Lost World a few months later.
Sorry, the name of that book again?
So the original was just called Jurassic Park, and then it's The Lost World. And then the Gilded Ones is the one I'm currently on. But I've also got the Jurassic Park. I didn't
realise that the Gilded Ones was part of the Jurassic Park.
Oh no, that's a completely separate entity. But it's one that's just I've moved on to now because I was intrigued by alternative fantasy a little bit. So I'm just going over my last three that I've had. So it was Jurassic Park, Lost World. That's all there is for the kind of Jurassic Park universe. Although I still hanker for more. Currently reading the Gilded Ones, but I have just got Jurassic Park and Philosophy, which is about you know, the looking a bit deeper into the meanings and information that we find out and the theories that are brought forward in the Jurassic Park franchise. So I'm having a little brain break with the Gilded Ones, and then we're straight back to Jurassic Park again in a week's time.
I really like this notion of treating books like a kind of, okay, here's some bonus content for after the films. That's such a lovely approach. Mike DeGrief, I don't know if you know the head roll of Pirates of the Caribbean. Are you familiar with this?
I enjoy to play the head roll of Pirates of the Caribbean. Does he mean that?
And maybe you don't receive the rum. So would you enjoy playing the head roll of Pirates of the Caribbean?
I think the rum would be mandatory, I'm afraid. I'm a big rum fan. Obviously living with some pirate ethic. It is my go-to if I have to choose a booze.
You've got the facial features to pull off the...
I know, right? It's this is... I mean, luckily for me, in some ways, this is just the way my facial hair grows. I've had a bit of beard envy at some points in my life. But actually, I think goatees have more fun in a weird way. And I've had jobs literally off of my facial hair, which is, I can't really complain at, right? I've been a pirate, I've been a wizard, all these sort of things through some of my museum work. And I think the facial furniture has helped me on my path to realizing who I am. It's really pushed me in a direction, which is kind of nice, right? For your, just how you are to help you on your path and discover who you are a little bit more. Because yeah, I can't grow, these bits don't grow, nothing here. It's wisps at best. Sometimes over the 6 weeks of the summer holidays, if I'm teaching, I'll try and see if I can get anything going, and it is very limited. It's an embarrassment really to my face, but equally I'm not complaining really, because yeah, this look has done me well. So
you've got roles in the museum where you work as a pirate. We'll have to come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that bit.
Okay. Hello, Adrian. It's lovely to see you. Who says definitely getting some Guybrush Threepwood vibes from your face.
I don't know what that means, but I love it.
You know, from Secrets of Monkey Island.
Oh, see, I've never played Monkey Island, which is an absolute travesty.
Neither have I, but I've heard of it. And
yeah, Russell's often recommending it. I'll get there.
Rob is putting words into your mouth and saying, okay, you enjoy giggling because the chitsing, the rules, news, and information are not fun. Do you want to deny or comment on this weird allegation?
Oh, yeah, I know, right? It's terrible. I think some people love the nitty-gritties of rules, and that's perfectly fine, and getting into it and really focusing on the rules. And I think, I don't know, when we talk about role play, for example, some people have that, you know, that Dungeon Master's Guide or whatever it is, straight to hand because the rules really matters to them. I like to see rules, like many people, as guidelines, and so therefore I'm not so interested. And sometimes I think a game should be tweaked if it makes it more fun for the group you've got, to make it a better experience for those around that particular table. So yeah, I think there's fun to be found in the rules, but equally, who brings that fun? I rarely see a rule book, and it's not. It hasn't. There are some, but it's rare that I find a rule book. I think, no, I really enjoyed that rule book. There are some out there that take themselves a little bit less seriously, maybe, but by the nature of rules, sometimes they have to be a bit rigid. The rules
are kind of there to facilitate the fun, and the fun is the outcome of that, whereas the chits is kind of more pondering the nature of that. Yeah. So, what's your favorite type of aquatic creature?
Oh, probably merfolk, I think. So I'm big into the mythology and cryptozoology and all those sort of things. So merfolk, even going to like the origins of where the merfolk legends came from and those sort of things, I think is glorious. So I really enjoy all of that. But hey, I'm a big fan of the sea. I just watched Seaspiracy. I don't know if anyone's watched that yet, but that has blown my mind open even more so. So yes, I'm a big advocate for looking after all the oceans and all those little aquatic creatures, big or small. So I've got a lot of time for the oceans.
Not tempted by sirens.
Sirens, well, I think that is the problem, isn't it? To be tempted by the sirens. So got to be careful of them. Got to be careful. Hey, but I mean, equally with the sirens, they have changed, I guess, the look of the sirens. And some sirens were originally more like bird-like creatures that would sit on the rocks and have the kind of human faces and these large bird-like bodies, and would sing to kind of get the pirates to crash into the rocks rather than drag them under the water.
Yeah, I mean, so my next question is, have you ever played Magic the Gathering? And if you do play Magic the Gathering, would you play a merfolk deck?
Oh, good question. The only two Magic the Gathering decks I own are the Goblins versus Merfolk decks. I've never really got into Magic the Gathering. I think it's a great game, but it's one of those, I've seen many of my friends lose lots of their finances to that game. And I think it's a very way, you have to be controlled with Magic the Gathering. And that's why I only own those two decks, because I think they're the most fun to play. So I have a Merfolk deck, I have a Goblin deck, my two favorite, mythological creatures. And so battling those, I'm happy to play either deck anytime. So yeah, that's my only experience of Magic is a Merfolk and a Goblin deck.
Is this a pre-constructed deck, or is this one?
Yeah, so I think they were sold in a dual pack. So it was sold as Merfolk versus Goblins, and I was like, that's the pack for me. And I've never needed any more since. But yeah, I've got lots of, my brother used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering. He spent a small fortune on that game and was very, very good at it. And he's learned a lot of skills, I think, from Magic the Gathering. He's brought into other games he's now playing, just that deck construction and how combos and all those sort of things happen, which I think is a fantastic skill to learn from any game. And now he's doing very well in the other games that he's playing off the back of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, for sure. And I know lots of people learn literacy and numeracy from Magic the Gathering, because there's a lot of really good vocabulary used in these games. And,
oh yeah.
We've got a possibly final question from Rob, who asks, what is your favorite dinosaur-related board game?
It's a very good question, because for a long time I was kind of searching for a good dinosaur board game, because I think about 5 or 6 years ago there weren't many out there, and we had this huge influx for some reason. I guess it was the Jurassic Park generation kind of hit the board game scene quite aggressively, and then we had this explosion of dinosaur board games. We've got obviously Dinosaur Island and those sort of ones. We've got Dinogenics, tiny epic dinosaurs as well now. But yes, as Russell has declared, Dinogenics is probably one that stands out the most to me, because it's the most kind of detailed, and you get that park building experience along with the kind of genetics of dinosaur creation. But I'm generally enjoying Tiny Epic Dinosaurs as well, which is a much smaller game and takes up a lot less space, and gives you that whole, you get to build your little dinosaur theme park the same way. But yeah, I think there's still room for more dinosaur games. We've been playing on Board Game Arena recently. There's the Draftosaurus, which we've been really enjoying, because it's just such a fun family game. So that's been great recently as our little family. We have a little family board game Zoom each week.
Doesn't feel dinosaur related, really. I don't know.
Doesn't need to be. Yeah, it's one of those where the theme is very much tagged on.
Yeah,
but
it's just an abstract, like 5-minute thing. I played it a few times on Board Game Arena. I was, oh, cool. I've interviewed that person. But yeah, we've got some heckling going on. Come on, Rob, be nice to the new faces. Although I think that Russ knows that you're joking. Russ mentions Dino DNA. Would you agree with that?
Dino DNA is a game I tried to create many moons ago. So Russ has been very kind to remember that one, dig that one up, because I thought
I had not heard of this, so that explains why.
Yeah. So this was similar in some ways to Draftosaurus, I suppose. It was like a bit like a Sushi Go-ish game, but the mechanic I'd introduced, which was sort of interesting, and I should have explored maybe a little bit more, was the fact you could flip the cards to change the colors to make it more adaptable through the game, and help you get what you were looking for in the genetic chains, as it were, to build these dinosaurs. So, for example, every card had like a yellow DNA strand on the back, which you'd need to start any new dinosaur. So you could either play it as the new color, which would advance your strain, or as a base color, which would then let you start a new dinosaur strain. So you kind of had this choice of, do I try and keep building the ones I've got, or do I start a fresh one? And then how far do I want to expand out? And then I haven't got enough, strains to complete any of them. So it was a seed of something in there, but I never quite pushed it, I think, far enough, and could never quite grab the finished game.
It sounds interesting conceptually, but when you're drafting, having to flip every card to look at...
Well, every card had a yellow DNA, on the back, so it was always the same on the back, so they all looked the same.
So the back was always identical. It's just
the back was that choice of, are you starting a new one, or are you adding to the ones you've already got?
Basically, is the front good enough that you want to use the front, or if you don't think the front is very good, you can use the back?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not overwhelming with choices. Okay. No, that when you kind of explained it, so I was like, whoa, that sounds like
it's a lot.
Every single card. Too much.
A lot of that, yeah.
But have you actually played this one, Welcome to Dino World? I'm
Welcome
biased.
to
I
Dino
worked a
World.
wee bit on it.
Is this? I don't know if I have played
The
that.
Roland Wright from Alley Cat's
Oh
Games
yes,
by
yeah.
James, or I keep forgetting James's surname. There was James who worked on it, and James was the first person. James something. Someone in chat can let me know the name. And won the Gen Con competition that Suzanne Sheldon it ran with, hey, here's a rolling rights. It's a rolling rights all about dinosaur parks. And Cesar bought the rights to it. James O'Connor, awesome. I wasn't 100% sure, so thank you for confirming that.
I do remember this game now, yeah, and we had a lot of fun. Roller. That was my first roller right I bought. Actually, was that game, and so yeah, we had a lot of fun with that one. It's not stayed in my collection for just again my crowd, I suppose. It's one of those, when you really enjoy it, and it's a good solo mode actually as well in that game. But yes, for the crowd I was playing with, it didn't quite hit for them. I think it was their first experience, and there was a lot obviously happening in that game, which is great for those who want to really get into and love the doodling part, which I adored drawing dinosaurs and just seeing everyone's finished pages once they'd done and all their cute little dino doodles was a real treat. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good in that game.
Yeah, I think the doodles were all graphic designed by Zach Eisdegood or something like that, and
great, yeah.
solo mode by Nick Shaw and Dave Turksey. And my main contribution was helping generate the visitor cards, which was, I think, Cesar was over at my house actually for a work day. Oh yeah, I think that was the same day that we also played still the only board game I've ever played, which feels like it's all about time travel. So you've not played this. It's unpublished, sadly. It's called Butterfly Wars. It's a war game where you're going through, and it's really well done, and it's a serious epic game. And then at certain points, you rewind time, and everything that happened happens again. But some of your units will go back in time. So the units that aren't new units, if you know what I mean, they don't have agency. So they just do exactly what was written down on this bit of paper. But then the new units that have gone back in time, they are great. But if you manage to send a new unit to destroy the original unit, and so the original unit doesn't manage to make it back in time, then there's kind of a paradox, and that unit gets totally exterminated from reality. So if you actually just kill a unit, that doesn't even matter, because you can go back in time and kill the unit that's killing your unit, and that's totally fine. And then now your unit that wasn't dead, now that has agency, and it's yeah.
That sounds incredible.
It is one of my favorite games, and I'm so annoyed that it's unpublished, and I totally get why Cesar didn't sign it, despite me really pushing for it. And yeah, Cesar wanted I think Cesar was put off by the fact that it is pretty much a 2-player game. It takes about maybe 3 hours, maybe 2 hours if you're playing quickly. But to my mind, I know that's a tough sell, but it feels really intense. I don't know any other game that genuinely feels like it's about time travel. I know there's like, as far as board game goes, I know that you've got some stuff from Looney Labs. I know that Anachrony is quite well known, but I don't feel like any of these actually feel like they're about time travel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that one sounds like you actually get to, because you're existing in both streams of time, then you're actually seeing the time travel occur, which I think a lot of games try and replicate that idea, but it's hard to grab.
Yeah, and I feel like I should actually. This was also done by a teacher, a maths teacher actually, who had this one crazy idea, and then had a second idea for a party game, which was a bit less crazy and less interesting, I'm going to be honest. But it was a social deduction game. It was perfectly good. It was just, there's a lot of social deduction games that do exactly the same thing. Hey, you've made a great social deduction game, but would I want to play it more than any of these other games? Whereas, yeah, Butterfly Wars, that is honestly the best. And I include my own in this. If I could pick one game right now, actually, I probably would be published if I could pick one game. But definitely out of everyone else's that I've ever seen, that is my favorite thing.
Amazing.
And good morning, Ben. Good morning, Kelly. It is lovely to see you. We're just finishing off the questionably quick questions, but as always, as we finish up, during this show, it's all about David, so feel free to ask any questions. And let me ask you about what's something that brings you pleasure? What's something that is a brilliant thing? Brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Ooh.
It's a brilliant
I'm going
thing.
to say cooking, you know.
Hmm.
It's something that we've really got into. That's been my lockdown learning has been through just cooking. And we were okay. We were much like many couples, I'm sure. We kind of got into our routine of the similar sort of meals, right? We were like, we'll cook the same stuff because we know it. It's easy. We kind of just got in from work. We just want something we can throw on and it's done. But we found the joy of cooking. It was one we actually started through one of those little, order boxes. We get Mindful Chef, which is one of those where it turns up, it's got all the kind of ingredients inside, and it gives you the little recipe book. My wife and I are both vegan, so we need to explore some of the different flavors, and we were kind of had our staples, but we wanted to really just push ourselves a little bit and try some new stuff. And especially in a world where you can't go out and head to a restaurant and try something really fancy. We're like, well, I guess we'll just have to open our own restaurant in our front room then. And so we both love cooking together as well, which I think is a really nice thing to do. So we'll whack the radio on and just have a wonderful sort of wherever long it takes, basically, hour in the kitchen, just prepping and cooking together. And then obviously you get to enjoy the fruits of that by then having a lovely meal together as well, light the candle and just make the most of it. So yeah, that's been a real treat actually, is cooking together, finding all these new recipes. Like we've done these like mango and like curry tempeh sort of dishes, like rice bowls, and they're just phenomenal flavor explosions. And so I've become a bit of a flavor snob because of this, but I'm glad I have, because now I just have the most delicious things served up that we can make each evening, which is a joy.
Yeah, why not? Eating is something we all have to do for sustenance. And if you can, if you're really getting into something like bubble tea, I'm not going to lie, it is a little bit of a vice of mine. I was thinking before this show that I might make a wee cheeky order and then go and get something from, because regular listeners might know that January I decided to not have any sugar, and February I allowed myself to eat as I wanted, and March I didn't have any sugar. Like, I had bread, but other than that I didn't have any sugar. And then it got to April and I'm like, yay, now I'm going to try Weetabix and fruits and fiber and bran flakes. And it's not like I'm going into the Frosties or anything like that, but because those were things that I wasn't allowing myself last month, now they're kind of exciting again. But also, with cooking, why not enjoy the thing? Like, especially when you've got spices. It's like yesterday when I was cooking my potatoes, it was like oregano, a bit of this spice, bits of that spice, and bits of like black pepper. I think it was rosemary, oregano, and something else I saw. And it's like understanding how the spices work together, having an inkling of how these things work. And that lots of love, Mike. That's totally fair, and stay funky. And people are asking, firstly, also, hello CD, it is lovely to see you. And I just want to just finish this appreciation for enjoying the things that we have to do anyway. Do you know what I mean? Whatever we get to do, whether it's like going for a walk, I think it's all about enjoying the moments and trying to find as much joy as we can in all the things that we have to do anyway. So
BBC Six music in answer to Cece's question.
Radio 6 music.
Oh yes, big fans.
Ooh, fancy. I was going to that's a very succinct answer. Adder Noir says, whenever I finish cooking, I often want to go back in time and have another try. Do you ever have that?
Oh, I don't know. I think the nice thing about this, I suppose, is that, if you make a dish and you think, you know what, this could, and it's like you're saying, Bez, with the alchemy of cooking, which I love thinking of it like that, is that, you go into your laboratory almost and you're conjuring up this delicious food, is that you'll finish that dish, you'll try it, and as you get more used to different flavors, you'll think, okay, this might need that next time, and then you can explore that dish, next week and try it with the new ingredient, those red peppers that might just give it that little lift in a certain area. And I think that's the beauty of cooking as well, is not, celebrating the dish itself and then building on that dish maybe next time And if you find it, you make the perfect dish, then just do that again. Do that again. I've learned you need to put
100%.
a whole box of portobello mushrooms in a good risotto. That's what I've learned from this.
And that's the thing. You don't have to go back in time. You can just try it again because, hey, we don't get to... Yes, you have to kind of buy all the ingredients and do all the prep again. It's not like, okay, you can do everything but make that one tweak. But sometimes, you know, if I'm making roast potatoes, true story, I might say, okay, this half I'm going to do in this way. This half I put a slightly different spice. And we've got a few shouts. Firstly, J Fool's Guards talking about Butterfly Wars, the time travel game. That's what I was talking about 2 minutes ago. The repeated actions as time travel. Yes, 100%. And I think this is a key thing. And I can totally imagine PSC or GMT Games maybe publishing something like this. Although, does GMT do non-historical things, like totally fictional things? Because it feels like that would be kind of their crowd, if you know what I mean. Anyway, and CD shouts out to Weetabix, because, you know, if you're in New Zealand, you can't get it, maybe. Oh. And Russ, I don't know if this is... I'm assuming this is true, but apparently Russ has cooked for you, but you have never cooked for Russ. The other parts of...
That's because I often go to Russell's. So I think it's only fair, right? I make the
Russell,
journey.
How many times have you actually been in David's place? That's the question.
Yeah. Put that out there.
Yeah, Ross.
But no,
yeah, Ross.
Russell's a very good cook as well. Makes a delicious treat. He's one of those good larder cookers. He can look at whatever's in that cupboard and turn it into something
So what I'm hearing is after lockdown, you need to have a party around your place.
Oh yeah, I'm all up for one of those. What's that show called? Where you all come round. Come dine with me. There we are.
What? We should totally do that, and we should stream it.
Oh, done. Let's do a
okay, so like you, me, Russ, someone else. I don't know how many people are normally there.
Give us up for it. Let us know. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, so like someone who's in the London area. And
sounds great.
So yeah, let's do this, and let's all kinds of, maybe we eat the thing, we play a board game, and then we kind of critique each other's meal, and that could be pretty good. Like after lockdown, maybe fingers crossed, second half of 2021. That could...
definitely to look forward to. I'm in.
Okay, Ross, are you in? And anyone else, if you're watching and you're based in London, and we can kind of do a quick check to make sure that you're not a total numpty, then yeah. Apparently, are we getting a 5-course meal? Because that's what you've been built up to in the
up to 5 courses. I mean, I can definitely do a decent 3. We'll see. We'll see how we go.
I think that's if David does 5 courses, that's just raising it for everyone else.
I know. That means everyone's got to do 5 courses.
I feel like, let's say it's between 1 and 3, and like, you know, even if you're just doing a stew, if we were actually trying, I would probably do at least 2. I'm not promising 3 even, but like there would be at least 2.
I like this.
But yeah, maybe a fruit salad, maybe a stew, maybe with peanuts. That's what I'm doing for my thing, my speciality. Maybe some sorts of veggie salad as a start. Yeah, actually, you know what? I would do the 3 courses. I would make a special deal.
He's in. Love it.
Yeah, just like a veggie salad. 1 starter and 4 desserts. No, let's not get that unhealthy. Let's move on. Talking about the alchemy of cooking, we've also got the alchemy of board games, which is kind of... We are here to go on the tangents and just enjoy all the conversation, but please feel free to continue commenting, asking questions, thumb like, follow, all that good stuff. And now let's talk about David Murcutt. So, yeah, David Murcutt, what is your first ever memory?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I distinctly remember. It's not a happy one, unfortunately, but it was racing up and down. This was in the good old days when you were allowed to play on the street. And my older brother had got his new bike, and I was on a little trike at the time. And we were racing up and down our street, which is actually still I live quite close to. I've only moved about 10 minutes away from my old family home. And so we would be riding up and down the street all day long. It was great. When the sun was out, just having the best time. And my older brother and I decided to go on the race from the start of the street all the way to the end again. And within, it must have been seconds, he just flew off on his bike, and there's me trundling away on my little trike. And I don't know what it was. It must have been a stone or something. I just hit it and went over the top and smashed my head on the concrete. And I just remember seeing the blood gush out of me onto the streets, and then having to be whisked very quickly away to a hospital to get that seen to. It all worked out. Obviously, I'm okay, but it was quite a distinct memory, obviously. Most of my early memories are all about head trauma. I had about 4 experiences of head trauma as a young child.
Well, clearly, you know, he still managed to turn out okay despite all the head trauma. Which I'm glad to see that you made.
I know, it was
relatively.
I had one which was a large piece of chalk. We used to go down to Dover for family holidays and Folkestone. We used to have little chalk fights. You throw a little piece of chalk, right, and it explodes when it hits the ground. It looks glorious. But my little brother, bless him, thought he'd pick up quite a large chunk of chalk to see how that exploded, and that was back of the head. And then having to be carried across the beaches to get back to Folkestone to get that seen to. That wasn't as bad. Luckily, the chalk, I think, broke enough. It was just more of a rattled me around a little bit. That was good. Another one falling off a swing.
Why are you doing this against each other's heads? Why not do it against the cliff or something?
Well, that was the idea. It was meant to you'd hit near their feet or something like that, But my little brother was quite young, and it wasn't his best moment.
Didn't quite understand the concept.
Yeah, the game didn't have the rules. You see, you got to have the rules in place.
So, talking about games, firstly, what is your first memory of a board game?
That's a very good question. I'm trying to think back now, and it's probably of those Monopoly and Cluedo sort of days. Those are the ones we had on the family shelves, and they got the most play. And Risk, I remember chess as well, actually. I guess it counts, being distinct because my dad has really gorgeous chess set, and it just made you want to play the game. It was this lovely wooden board which was all kind of glazed on top and intricate woodwork all around the edges, and the pieces, they weren't super fancy, but they were all just really nicely finished, and I thought, oh, this is a beautiful set to play with. So yeah, lots of chess. And I remember actually getting really into chess when I was a kid. I used to go to scouts and enter all the sort of chess tournaments. And so that was my experience of gaming that led into a more competitive gaming, I suppose, and how that felt. But yeah, mostly around the table, it would have been those kind of card games, lots of Snap and those sort of things, and then into a bit of Cluedo, bit of Risk, and a bit of Monopoly. Never really enjoyed Monopoly, though.
I was going to ask, did you ever finish a game of Monopoly to your memory?
We definitely had, yeah. I remember finishing Monopoly a few times, but never really enjoying the experience. I think there's a point in Monopoly when you kind of know, right, the game's over, and yet it still drags on. So, I remember that being a bit of an experience. I always liked Risk because we had that Napoleonic set, and I was massively into the TV show Sharp as a child, and so I would use the little figures from Risk as my toys, basically, and set up all these crazy battles in my front room across the carpet. And then I'd gone down to the local library and I'd found the cassette tape of the soundtrack to the Sharp season, which I would then put on and have these little battles. And if ever we went to a museum or a castle, I'd pick up those little flick cannons. Do you remember those that you could get? And so it slowly, I had Waterloo ready, basically.
So you weren't even using it really to play Risk. It was just there as a toy. And
I loved the components were more interesting to me than the game was.
I'm definitely getting the sense of how much components matter from you chatting about the chess sets and the beauty bringing you in. I mean, for sure, there's a time in my life when I was a bit, I don't know, elitist, saying, oh, only the mechanics matter, this kind of purity, but why not have it all? Why not?
Have it all, yeah.
Now, talking about also early memories, I'm sure that you've got early memories of food, and potentially, if you were to try and encourage someone who might be a bit reluctant to be part of a kind of come dine with me inspired stream, if you were to try and talk someone into doing that, who might be talking about, hey, I'm just going to get a meal deal from Sainsbury's, A, would that be okay as part of this thing? And B,
I'm all for it. I think, once again, if the rules are there to be as guidelines, then it counts. It counts because you could have the carrots and hummus as your starter. You could have the wrap or sandwich itself as your main course, and I think they do those little nice Rocky Road bars. That's a fine dessert. You're done, and probably, comes with the drink as well, doesn't it?
I don't think you get the hummus and dips and
Oh,
wrap.
you got to choose one or the other.
You get normally like a snack, which might be the chocolate, the wrap, and a drink. So that I would say that's 2 courses and a drink.
I mean, can you count a smoothie as a dessert?
You could
get away with
I
it.
guess, like if you bring the smoothie in as a second dessert, yeah, I could be down with that.
Depends how you
like
serve
if you really don't have the time or energy, then we would be rating you on your hospitality, on your game choice, and on.
We will be marking everyone, of course, because as in the show, right? You get a mark out of 10. So I don't know how your meal deal is going to fare.
Out of cooking, out of hospitality, and I don't know, game choice. Yeah, but anyway, do you have any early memories of cooking? Is that actually even a big part of your life, or is that just what we ended up talking about?
It was a bit of a disaster, my experience of cooking as a child. And I think part of my problem of being in this quite routine was because our family was very much like, on Monday we have liver and bacon, on Tuesday we have space food, on Wednesday. And it was very much like that's just what it was that night. It's a bit like school dinners, I suppose. So it was very regimented and not very exciting. And I tried to go like vegetarian when I was kind of hitting my teens, and that didn't really go too well in my house because it didn't fit the program. And so it was very much, put on me as that being a problem. And so that kind of deterred me a little bit from that. And so we got stuck into this. And then I tried obviously cooking myself because that seemed to be the only other alternative. And that was equally a disaster. I mean, I set fire to a lot of oven hobs in my time. we tried to cook, when I wasn't the veggie and all those bits and bobs, I was, cooking burgers and those sort of things. My parents had gone away, and oh my goodness, we put them under the thing with the tin foil, and you're not meant to put tin foil under a burger. That's what we soon learned, because obviously the fat is meant to fall into the tray below. And if you don't do that,
put the tin foil underneath the tray, so you don't. It's like
that's the smart way to do it. Yeah.
Like you have the the lattice
grill,
thing, and then you put the tin foil underneath, so you don't have to wash that.
We foolishly put it on top of the the grill part, and so it was just this ready.
And then it was too close to the heat, and it caught a bit of fire.
Up it went, and so it was fire blankets and fire extinguishers, and yeah. Do you know how much? I mean, even then, it cost about £15 for a new hob for an oven. So burning 4 of those as a teenager was seeing basically a goodbye to my pocket money for about 3 months. So it didn't go well.
Less than I expected.
This was back in the 90s, though, I suppose. I don't know how much a hob costs you these days. It's probably extortionate now. But yeah, so cooking for me didn't really start until we'd moved out and got to kind of explore that self. And obviously, like university, I was away for a year for university, but that was very much cheap and cheerful, pasta and tomato sauce cooking for about a year until we finally got our own place and started enjoying cooking as well. So yeah, that's my cooking journey. It's been a roller coaster.
Yeah, and if you divide a single serve into 5 equal parts and then serve them sequentially, do you have a 5-course meal? Yeah. Let's get into early adulthood. What were your first jobs?
First jobs, I very quickly worked at Woolworths back in the good old days. Represent, big W. So that was a proper clerk's job, that one, because I had such an amazing group of friends who were there, and obviously none of us really cared about the job, and so we just messed around loads, and I had such a great time there, and I learned very quickly how to trick the managers into making you think that you were doing work, and if they were approaching you quite aggressively, what I could say to them very quickly to confuse them into forgetting what they were going to tell me off about. And so as soon as I'd mastered the art of working in retail, I just had the best time. And made some really good friends there. But it got to that point, where we were running around the aisles with Nerf guns and that sort of style stuff you just shouldn't get away with in these sort of places. But we just had the best time, and just trolling each other out with various Twilight posters stuck in the service lift and these sort of things. It was just it was good, and equally infinite access to the pick and mix aisle, which is payment enough as a teenager for any job you're doing. I didn't care about how much money I get in my paycheck. What I care about is that I could get to the foamy shrimps whenever I wanted.
Genuine parts of the job, or was that just something that you kind of cheekily took?
Up in the stockroom, they would have, you know, you'd see downstairs, obviously, the massive amounts of pick and mix that are available in the huge pick and mix display unit there. But that's just one part of the pick and mix, because it comes in huge bulk boxes. You know, these are massive things. And so you just have these huge boxes of those little jelly eggs, or huge boxes of foamy shrimps and bananas. And it was just a wall of the stockroom is dedicated to sort of pick and mix sweets, basically. And so obviously anytime I'd have to go up to the stockroom to check for something, well, I would make my way through the pick and mix aisle to help myself to a few cheeky treats on the way, which is terribly unhygienic. But there you go. And that kind of spilled into later jobs as well, because I then worked in a cinema later on. And that was, we were actually allowed infinite popcorn and infinite Coke from the taps there, because it's just so cheap for them in a cinema. I mean, obviously that's where most cinemas used to make their money, was through the food stands. And you would get these huge bags of popcorn, and you know, you'd serve those into the little heaters. But that popcorn, it cost them like 50p a bag, and they're selling it for 5p a little container. So they were just making bank on those. So any staff member was entitled to any of the pre-mix, we called it, which is the little Coke and Fanta, you know, little fillers, and any of the popcorn. But to be honest with you, after about 2 weeks of eating really rubbish quality popcorn and filling up on the quite acidic Coca-Cola from the premix, you're kind of done with it. And so that would be the end of that. So yeah, that was my earliest jobs, were working in Woolworths, working in a cinema, which again, I really enjoyed. And I also was a I would say paper boy, but I was about 16, so more of a paper man at the time. But I would run around on my bike and deliver people's newspapers. But it was good exercise, but a terrible job. It was one of those where I didn't really enjoy getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I didn't really enjoy having to deal with dogs trying to bite my fingers off when I was posting the Guardian through someone's letterbox. And it wasn't really the right crowd. And the pay was obviously very cash in hand, about £5 for getting up that early in the morning. I was like, I don't think any part of this is worth the struggle. So that didn't last very long. And then after, cinema is when I started getting into education, basically. So that kind of brought us up to how it all began.
Yeah, so at what point did you decide, hey, I want to be a teacher, I want to help train the next generation of humans?
So I'd gone to university. I did a degree in filmmaking and media, which I loved. It was great fun. I love working on projects that have deadlines, which is something I've struggled with now. I don't have those, I suppose, out externally from my jobs and stuff. So being at university where I had, 6 weeks to create a movie was just the best experience, because that's kind of how I'd grown up making movies. I did a lot of like home videos and had a few groups of friends who would love to get together and make films together. Me and my brother used to make silly little, with action figures, actually. We used to use our Star Wars figures and make little, move them around. We'd sellotape their legs to these little knives and then move them in front of the camera like a little puppet show almost, and perform and do voices for them. So I'd been making films for most of my young life. And so obviously when the chance came up that I could just do this and for 3 years have the experience of making movies and talking about films, I grabbed it with both hands, had a great time. And so always in the back of my head, I knew I wanted to do something in film. At first, I tried to kind of get into a bit of corporate filmmaking, which was horrible. I didn't really enjoy it. It was big money, but I was filming conferences I cared little about. Did a few little odd jobs here and there. And I had already knew a few teachers just as friends, and they had obviously talked about, how it'd be interesting to kind of fuse the two and do filmmaking workshops with kids, that sort of style stuff. And so there was a few seeds being planted, and I was still at the cinema at this time. And ultimately, I think the one day I knew I needed to get out of the cinema was I was cleaning Dr. Cheese off a bin, which is, the cheese sauce you get with nachos. It's this horrible glue of a thing. And someone obviously just like cast it into the side of this metallic bin. And I was cleaning this Dr. Cheese off this swivel bin. And I thought, I've got a degree. And whilst I love being in the cinema, I think it's time for me to do something else. So I had that little moment of like, okay, this is clarity for me. As much as I would have loved to continue working in the cinema and still have lots of friends, unfortunately, are now out of work, that work in cinema. I used to work in Stratford Picture House, not too far from here. My mum worked in my local primary school, basically, the primary school I went to as a child. And so I said, hey, can I come and do some volunteering there, basically, whilst I'm still working at cinema? And so I would do a little bit of time at the primary school, a little bit of time at the cinema. And slowly I kind of got the bug. And I think anyone who's worked in education kind of knows that you're very quickly drawn into this, because it's good soul work, right? You kind of get the sense that, oh, you're making an impact here. Not something I'd felt really before working in the cinema or working in Woolworths. I never felt like I was doing an important job. I felt like it was a fun job. It kind of paid the bills and stuff, but I didn't ever love it, and I wasn't passionate about going to those places. It was more I had to surround myself with people I enjoyed being around, and the job was the second part of that. If I worked with people I liked, it would be okay. Whereas now I was in a job where I was generally excited to go in because I felt the work I was doing was making an impact on someone else's life. And so I was working there, and obviously it's not a very male populated job. It's getting better now. Education is kind of getting a bit more balanced. But at the time, being male in that industry was interesting because they had like lots of troubled children, for example, or come from difficult backgrounds for whatever reason. And so they were looking for kind of male role models, if we want to call it that, at the time. And so I would step in and work with those children who needed, I would just be doing stuff like building a scooter or something, or just chatting to these children who are having quite difficult home lives. And it was really like good work. I loved it. I loved the relationships we had with the children there. And, you know, I'd walk away thinking like, that was a good day. That was a good day. And so from then I knew, okay, it's time to shift my attention over to the education setting. And then I luckily got a full-time job at the school. Basically a job came up as a teaching assistant. And so I was like, yeah, I want to do that. That'd be lovely. Went to the interview there and then got full-time employed. And so I then started working in classrooms, seeing how a classroom worked, really soaking it all up, worked with some amazing teachers across the school. Some of them had actually taught me when I was a child, which is testament to their dedication to the cause. So that was fascinating. And they was just incredible, such inspirational teachers that were there. And I distinctly remember even being at the school and coming back and everything feeling smaller, like there's a strange, because obviously when you're in primary school, everything's scaled to your size. And then going back as an adult, it's like walking into this miniature world. So everyone feels like a giant because the chairs are tiny, the tables are tiny, the cups are tiny, everything's tiny. So it took a bit of time getting used to that because I knew those classrooms. I knew them because I'd been in them as a child. And then coming back to it was a very surreal experience, but I absolutely loved it. So yeah, and then from then it just rolled basically as far until eventually they offered, hey, do you want to train to become a teacher? And I was obviously like, yes, please. And then did my graduate training program, which is where I got paid to be a teacher, basically paid to become a teacher, which was very, very nice of them. And then from there, I've been doing it in classrooms now as a teacher for about 9 years now. Just crazy, almost a decade. I think it'll be next year.
So it seems like it was a mixture of dissatisfaction and apathy about your old job, combined with, just thinking what is there and having this opportunity thanks to your mum ultimately.
Yeah. Both of my parents had worked in education. My dad was a lecturer at a college and my mum had always been either a childminder, so we used to have like lots of she's a very good educator for young children especially. She's amazing with all those sort of bits and bobs, so I'd always known there was a little bit, if you want to believe in that you kind of, there's a bit in the blood of that, being an educator and just growing up in that world. I knew that was definitely a path I could take and probably be okay at it.
See, I know some people can't read the bottom because some people might be watching on their phones or whatever, but it says on the bottom, David is a teacher and gamer. You do use board games and RPGs to help engage students. And I want to go backwards a little bit first to talk about how you fell in love with modern board games, because presumably this happened before you started bringing them to the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. So I think when it sort of first started, I'm trying to think of what was my big kind of introduction to it. We loved a game called Zombies! ! And we played a lot of this game. It's by Twilight Incorporated, I think it is, or Twilight Inc. Creations. And fantastic. I didn't know much about board games, really. I used to go to Orc's Nest, which is in London, and they had all these board games that were available. They had quite a lot of D&D stuff, which is not a world I really understood at the time. I used to do a little bit of RPGing. I used to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay because I found a copy of the rulebook in my local library, and that introduced me a little bit to RPGs. But mostly we used to play this quite fun game called Zombies! ! Which was essentially a tile-laying game where you would run around trying to find a helicopter and collect like bullets and hearts and those sort of things whilst shooting little zombie miniatures. So drawn to those once again. It's all that goes back to the risk, I think, of those little components being a big factor in me picking up this game. And we used to, once again, as we mentioned before as well, really manipulate that rule book to make it fun for ourselves. big fan of video games, loving games. There it is. Big fan of video games, loves Resident Evil. That was my big experience into getting into video games. And so we used to kind of turn zombies into our little facilitator for playing Resident Evil as a board game, before obviously Resident Evil 2 finally did get made into a board game, which I haven't actually played now, ironically. So yeah, we had other models we started adding in. We had these giant insect models that I'd just had lying around the house. And so we'd add those in. We had little dog models, I think they released for the game as well. So we had those in. We started creating our own little campaigns where someone would be the kind of zombie master and create stories. One fantastic one we had was it was called the Mantis Parade, where we had a giant mantis that was essentially taking over the streets of this zombies world. And so it became this place for us to play in. And we loved just having that. And every weekend we get together at my friend's house and we play a game of zombies in whatever iteration it would look like. We kind of forgot what the actual rules were by the end because we'd manipulated it so much. So that was my first little stretch. And then from that, Zombicide was being released, however long ago that was now. And so I kind of saw that as the step up, the evolution of Zombies triple exclamation mark into becoming a real kind of board game. And again, I mean, anyone who's played that game knows the quality of the miniatures and just the production levels are crazy. It's that proper American board game. So I'd gone to I think it was an anime convention or something like that with a few friends who were like cosplayer friends. And we walked in, they had this huge board game stand in the sort of center where they were playing a bunch of these games, and Zombicide was one of them. And so I was like, I'm going to go and play that. And so I sat down to play that and was just hit immediately by this, like, wow, is this what board games can be? And on the table over me, next over was Resistance, which I then straight away went to play. And I was like, oh my goodness, board games are amazing. This is all I want to do now. And so I instantly picked up a copy of both of those games. I've still got my Zombicide. In fact, my laptop is resting on it because I need to raise my laptop up today. So there's a copy of Zombicide that you're currently sitting on there, Bez. So yeah, these games really open the door, and obviously from those it just snowballed then, and then we started to explore it more and more. Yeah, there they are. And again, that was another game that we started playing around with the rules for ourselves. And now we're into a million iterations of Zombicide. I've only actually owned the first one. I don't need any more of them, I suppose, because we love playing with the rules a little bit more to make them our own. So yeah, and then
a ridiculous amount of miniatures, and just mentioned zombies triple exclamation mark, which is an interesting. Yeah, how do you pronounce it? You go zombies.
I think that's it. That's the right way to say it.
It is actually exactly 20 years old. Released 2001, wow. And amazing. Zombicide, in case anyone was wondering, released 2012.
They are. So wow. So almost a decade of Zombicide.
So that would have been 8 years ago when it was just coming out. So you would have already been working for a year as a teacher.
So I think that's probably where the connection started to get made. Okay, so obviously of my career, I suppose, in education starting to grow, so is my love of board games, and so they're kind of simultaneously being explored. And so I started to see the connections, I suppose, between both and how that could really be impactful in the classroom. And it's not something I dabbled with, I suppose, as I was in my early days of teaching, because I was kind of just getting used to the classroom. And a lot of schools obviously have very set set like plans that you're meant to sort of follow. So when I kind of got my own class and started to explore that a little bit more, then I was like, okay, right, now let's try and introduce these actual educational tools in a new way, because loads of board games obviously have all these really interesting kind of hidden learning elements that are great to expand on, and especially with the modern board games that are meant to be, family games. They have all these beautiful little rules that are just in there that just, as you're playing them, you're just seeing the cogs turning and the learning happening, especially with maths, but equally with dexterity games and creativity games. It's all there. So I started just seeing board games in that way as well, from my kind of educator hat on. I was like, okay, what's in this game that is a learning tool as well as it just being a fun experience?
Yeah, because there is so much numeracy in so many games. I mean, even in a simple sense, if you've got Grabble, I'm clearly biased, the game for the L deck where you're just grabbing cards at the end when you've got to count all the cards. It's quite simple. You just go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not a difficult thing, but for someone who's maybe 7 years old, practicing to count up to higher numbers might be, even if you are just adding one at a time, getting familiar with these numbers. You could
and the big
play
thing
it
to say about education is purpose. Okay, so something we always strive for in any education setting is that there's a reason why the children are learning it. But that obviously is pushed by the teacher often. But if you put it into a different context and you give them that game, you're not asking them to do it, but as part of the game, they kind of have to do it to fulfill the game, I suppose. But that means they want to do it. And I think that's the biggest part of any educator's job, is to kind of get the children to want to learn. And so by putting in a much more fun and exciting, new, fresh way, I often find the children are kind of, explorative themselves rather than me having to kind of teach as much.
Let's talk a wee bit about if there's someone who's thinking about becoming a teacher and using games in their classroom, or thinking about using, because lots of people are homeschooling possibly. If someone's thinking about, hey, how can I use games to help teach my children? Or alternatively, if there's a teacher who's not used games in the classroom already, what advice would you give? How, and also for designers, is there a way that designers can make games better or worse for the classroom?
So I think that's an interesting one, because I think a lot of the games that I've used in education aren't games that you would particularly put as educational games. So they're the ones that I find, okay, that's got a really interesting element and a great way for me to teach this particular topic. So for example, I'm just thinking about multiplication, okay, where you're doing groups of multiplication. Get a game like King Domino to the table. Those children are now having to work out, their crowns versus their tiles, essentially, and they're having to do it multiple times, and with multiple multiplication problems they're having to solve to find their total points at the end of that game. But they want to do that, and it can be a simple multiplication. If you've got a small area, that can be nice and easy. But if they've got these huge swathes of swamps with 13 crowns all over, or whatever it might be, then they're doing much more tricky multiplications, which they're going to be excited to do again because they're striving to win the game. Equally, reverse that, you can go to games like Ink and Gold or Diamond, which is a division game because you're sharing it between the people around that table. So all of those, and it's also with any education kind of concept, you want there to be talking about it. You want the children to be discussing it all the time, because that's how the learning's really going in. And with board games, that's always happening, right? Because you are having that conversation. You're asking, oh, how are you doing now? You're looking over at someone else's board to see and working out what's on their board. With Ink and Gold, you're discussing, are you staying? Are you going? You're talking about risk and chance and all these sort of things. Or there's already, one of those trolls out. What if another one comes out? What's the probability of that happening? And so all this language is just happening naturally. And it's all things that you would have to usually take an hour long to try and teach in your lesson. But if those children are living it and they're experiencing it firsthand, you don't need to teach it. You don't need to get a slideshow up. You're giving them the experience itself. And that's where equally role-playing games come into the classroom as well, is because it's about experience, living it to understand it.
And it's interesting how having the practical application of the numeracy, sure, there's some kids, and I myself was one of those children who I was able to be given things and be like, yeah, I'm going to do these mathematical exercises, maybe because I naturally excelled at math. So I was driven to continue doing it, because when you're good at something, you want to, yay, I'm like getting good marks. Let's see if I can keep doing it. Whereas conversely, in geography, I'm going to admit, there's a point where I just got disinterested. I gave up. Had a test where I literally wrote Mickey Mouse for every single answer, because I was just like,
done with this. Yeah,
don't know. And obviously I had a wee bit of a talking to. I can't remember how that went. It was probably something of like, why did you do this? But anyway, but having that practical application and being like, this is the purpose of it, because if you're not achieving already, it's hard to stay motivated.
Yep. I think we have this, every child learns in a different way, and much like we still do as grown-ups, and there's all these different avenues you can try, and what might work for one child might not work for other, and that goes to board games as well. But I find you're kind of hitting a lot of the different styles, the audio, the visual, the kinesthetic. There are all these kind of ways of hands-on, seeing it, hearing it. All of those are hit with a board game. If you're just showing a slideshow and talking to children, they're not going to be as engaged as if they're actually grabbing something, holding something. And if you look at a lot of early education, it's all very physical, and that kind of lessens as you go up through education, because it does get a bit more formal, I suppose. But actually, board games are a good way of bridging that gap, because maybe older children don't want to be, getting counters out and counting things. But if you give them a board game which just has those components, once again, as pieces in the game, as part of a wider context that they're not having to worry about it seeming like, oh, I've got to get the counters out like one of those year one kids, it's a different experience for them, right? And it's an enjoyable experience for them. And it's not even just in the numeracy side of things, but in education and writing tools. We use story cubes loads in the classroom because they're just such a great, and Untold itself is the kind of board game facilitation of that.
So
to
then
create
people
stories
need
together.
to write the little short story that they generated using the story cubes.
Yeah, so we just had like, there was National Storytelling Week a few weeks ago. And so I would just send, this was still during home learning, I would send every child in the school my role for that morning. I'm like, here's the 9 dice I've rolled, send me your stories. And then we would share those stories and how wonderfully and wildly different they were. And it was just that celebration of storytelling with each other. And I think that's part of it, okay? If you've got that little spark of inspiration, any writer needs that. And so then coming back with something and having it celebrated was just a lovely experience for everyone. And then you can kind of go into, okay, well, what could we do with that story? Let's roll another dice and see how that might change everything. And so you get into those other writing tools that help to expand their knowledge of the writing concepts. So yeah, I mean, and role-playing games, same thing. I've kind of found that if I was just reading a book to children, they could switch off quite easily. Yeah. Whereas I started trying to use something called the dice game, which it's a very simple, it's the simplest role-playing game you could possibly imagine. But essentially, you think of a story, let's say it's the Lorax or the Borrowers or something like that, and you put the children into that story in a role-playing context. So you say, here's what's going on. And this can work I've done it as a whole class, I've done it as smaller groups. If you've got children who are kind of struggling maybe a little bit with understanding a text and that kind of comprehension, we call it, of a piece of writing, get them to live it, say, okay, instead of having, that character in that story, now you're going to be in the story. Okay, what do you want to do in this world? And as a facilitator, you can kind of create, from knowing the story yourself, that world for them to then run around and play in. We had it where the children were running up and finding the barbaloots, which are the little bears that live in the Lorax world, and they're all crying. Well, now the children are actually speaking to the barbaloots and asking them, oh, hey, what's wrong? Are you okay? And then the barbaloots are like, oh no, all our truffula trees are being chopped down by this evil. And I'm like, there you go, they're in it, they live in the story. And now those children can write about it because they've actually experienced it themselves. They care about the barbaloots more if I'm just reading to them about them.
I don't even know these barbaloots or like called these, but I totally get that. Okay, I mean, is there value in saying you must learn about this particular story? I mean,
so that would always be the basis for something more, I suppose, isn't it? It's like it's giving them a shared knowledge of something that we're all going to talk about together.
Yeah, because like building up on their creativity. Now, you've talked about RPGs and you've talked about Rory's story cubes, where it's just bringing something, and it's very much not an ortho game. It's not a game which is about the test of skill or test of how well did you do this. It's about, hey, I'm going to contribute something to the table, which is a really nice way to avoid the competition that can occur. And I was actually going to ask about this as well. So I'm glad that Adder Noir has said, how do you deal with one student winning the game over, other people? If someone's constantly losing a game, how do you make sure that they're still invested? And yeah, also after we talked about that, let's talk about cooperative games.
So you've got the nice balance, okay, between some board games, and I think enjoyment's the biggest part, and teaching the enjoyment of any game, right? Because as all board gamers, we know more often than not you're going to lose. If you're playing a game with 5 players, one person's going to be the winner, and there's going to be a collective group of losers, and that's great. That's part of the game, is enjoying getting there and the experience of doing that. And games like I mentioned there, which is Diamante or Ink and Gold, is a game about pushing your luck and knowing that by doing so you're dealing with a chance of losing, but equally everyone's engaged in that experience. Even if there's just one person left who's pushing through that that temple, everyone's kind of rooting for them, but equally kind of wants them to mess up because they know that there's going to be that, or they might win, see how much diamonds they've got in their chest.
On how much Schadenfreude you have within you.
Yeah, exactly, all of that. So it's been like fun to watch that, and I think teaching the joy of losing is part of any board game experience, and children will soon feel that as well themselves. They're highly intelligent creatures, so they kind of get the sense of that, and they know that that one win they get is going to feel good, but equally we're going to play another game and they might lose that one, and vice versa. And we try not to just play one game either. We'll try and mix it up with different games that might be more explorative in a different way, and let them shine in whatever way they might be. And those games, such as King Domino, can have a little bit of randomness in them anyway. But if you're playing King Domino 1 minute and then Rhino Hero the next, you're going to have a very different experience anyway, and you're exploring a very different skill set.
Do you think it's important for games in that environment to have a certain degree of chance, so that, I mean, even King Domino, let's be honest, I don't know, I've not played King Domino that much. It's not like I'm the best player. I don't know how bright your kids are. But, there's a certain skill differential at which, someone is going to always win. Someone else might be like, oh, I just can't get it. Do you think it's important to sometimes go with something like Ink and Gold, or something where, it is even less skill-based than Ink and Gold, where it's just, okay, sometimes you lose, to learn to deal with that failure, because that is a really good skill for life, to learn to deal with failure.
That's a massive part of it. And again, as one of those extra secret learning, parts that happen in board games, is the fact that life is not all peaches and roses all the time. And sometimes we'll have those bad days, and that's fine. We're going to lose sometimes. In fact, we're going to lose more often than we win, really. And so we might as well get used to that now. And it's in a safer environment to do that when you're obviously just playing a board game. And I'm lucky that I haven't really had any children that are bad losers, particularly, and we'd always have a chat about it. And equally knowing that you're not just playing this once, right? You're going to play it. It's here. I have my board games actually in display in my classroom above all my bookshelves, so that they know that they are there for them to play whenever they like. And so we have that kind of display.
Presumably they can't just say, oh, I'm not enjoying this lesson about maths, let's pick up a board game.
So we have a lot of time for it, but equally, if we've got through the work in the daytime, then we'll have some time at the end of the day, and we'll let them sort of pick. And wet play, for example, is a great time when you kind of have to get your board games out. Any school will have that, where the wet play, you roll around, you see it's raining outside, but the kids are enthusiastic because they're like, okay, great, well, let's get Ink and Gold down and have another go at that. And so that's perfect, because you're still getting learning done in the classroom even when they're playing. And I think meaningful play is something I'm hugely a fan of, in any way that we can get it into the classroom.
And Rob says King Domino is one of those games where you have the side benefits of having built something.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it.
For sure. Even if you lose, you get the joy of ownership. Between two cities might not be necessary. Actually, you know what? That would probably actually be a fine game. I don't know what you think about that game for a classroom setting. Between two cities.
I've not played Between Two Cities.
Numeracy, it plays fairly quickly. It plays 7 players officially, I want to say. Simultaneously, which is quite a nice player count.
And again, it's pitching it to your crowd as well. You can unofficially
play 8 players as long as you put the tiles back into the... So if you're playing 7 players, the tiles that you discard stay discarded. If you're playing 8 players, and the tiles that you discard in one of the later phases, you need to put it back into the draw thing, if you know what I mean. But yeah, having this sense of, oh, I've made this little thing.
Yeah. I think the kids generally love that experience as well, of seeing what they've built. That goes with anything. And again, imagination's a beautiful thing, and so they can kind of start creating stories that go around even those little Domino kingdoms they've made.
And let's go into cooperative versus competitive stuff. Do you play many cooperative things? How do you see there being a big difference?
Yeah, so I guess the co-op games would probably be the role-playing experiences you have, because it's always... There's no winner in that game particularly. They're all striving as a class to get to the end goal, whether that is to complete the story or get home or whatever it might be. So that is a collaborative experience, and I've had some really nice times where we'll have to finish a session for the day or whatever it might be, and there's that language then carrying on where the children are discussing what happened in the session they just had, which I always have when I'm role playing myself. I have a little weekly session with a few friends that I've mostly has just been over lockdown. It's kept me sane through lockdown, having a weekly RPG, a bit of D&D. But for the children as well, it's been really nice to see them have those shared experiences and to be able to discuss those. It's like going on a school trip, right? It's that same experience of like, remember when we did this cool thing together? And they will plan like, oh, what are we going to do next session? How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with the Onceler? Another Lorax reference. So there's all these little elements that they start to really take ownership over the story, even though it's a world created by somebody else. They still feel part of it. So I love that collaborative nature of RPGs. Collaborative board games, I haven't had many in the classroom. I haven't introduced too many of those. I would guess, like, the storytelling dice you can use as a collaborative storytelling game where you roll one dice each, pass the story on, and have that kind of thing. But no, I think it would be interesting to dabble in those. Usually my collaborative experience is RPG stuff.
And that's definitely an interesting one, because it's more of an experiential, I'm going to bring something to the table and we're not measured against anything, as opposed to what a cooperative game might be considered in board gaming circles, where it's you against the system. As a group, we win, or as a group, we lose. In an RPG, in Rory's Story Cubes, there's no sense of, hey, I guess there is, hey, you managed to clear the hurdle of telling some story. You win. And but it's really about the nuance of that, people wanting to do something clever. So the win as such isn't really dictated by the game. It's just, and that's where you get into social dynamics of, hey, do I want to just do the bare minimum, which is, and some days that's okay. Some days you need to do the bare minimum. And even just sometimes doing the bare minimum over and over, and you still get better at the thing. And
there's been some lovely, like, little social moments we have, and I think there's a big impact as well for neurodiverse children and board games. Is something else I want to chat a little bit about, which is to do with communication, and that's a huge part of board games. Again, so we've got one child who's Spanish EAL in my classroom at the moment, and board games have been a huge way for him to learn a bit more of the language, because he's just, again, communicating with those around the table. They've got, it's very simple. It's essentially like a set collection game. It was a Red Nose Day game, so they released for Red Nose Day, and it's just about giving out different cards and trying to get your set of 4 of, the badger nose or the daisy nose, whatever it might be. But his language has just increased so much because he's asking, well, have you got this? Have you got that? And so from someone who spoke no English about 2 months ago to now being able to articulate sentences and ask for specific things and enjoy the game with his friends that he's making because they have a shared experience together is a huge part of it. And equally with those children who have maybe ASD or something like that, or autism, then games like, we play Team 3 quite a lot, which is a game about communication where you have to remove one element, you can't see, but you've got to try and fill the pieces to build, because someone's telling you which piece to find.
By Matt Fantastic, released by Brain Games and inspired by the Free Monkey's Tale, where
it's so good.
One person sees the card and talks, then one reminds me.
So
how
one person can't
again.
Speak, but they can see the picture, so they point.
And then they mime at the things, and then the second person interprets the mimes into voice, and then the third person is blindfolded and has to hear the voice and do things.
So it's a really great exercise in, again, that sort of, team building skills for children, especially, who can be quite, egocentric, I suppose, and just think about, just their world. And so expanding it out with a game that involves, you have to have 3 working together to complete this, has been really, really fascinating to see. And especially with, children that have autism, that's a real life skill. Eye contact, communication, listening to others. Those are all really good ones, I think, for all children, really. But it's definitely a game that's helped when we've been doing some of the kind of interventions and bits and bobs with those children and need a little bit of help, communication skill help. So I think there's everything. And that's the nice thing about board games, is you'll play a game and you might think, oh, there's nothing in that that's going to help in my maths lesson, but I can use it in this communication lesson, or this little intervention we're going to do, or I could use it in the storytelling session, or I can just do it as a nice social experience. So there's something in most games, and that's why I don't think designers really need to push their games into being an educational board game, because your game probably already is educational. It's just finding which element within that game works, and equally to what age group, I suppose, is the bigger challenge. I work in Key Stage 2. I work in a Year 4 classroom, so my children are about 8, 9, pushing 10. So they're capable, very capable, and so most games I bring to them with a bit of explanation, they can soon dive into and get very quickly. But there's some games you probably need to simplify a little bit or tweak a little bit for younger kids, or you could just kind of let the kids explore it themselves if they're a little bit older.
That's a really nice story, and I don't know if I would agree with you when you say that, there's not much that a designer, okay, sure, maybe there's not much that a designer has to do, but surely there are things that a designer could do to make it even better for that educational setting. But the other thing that I realized as I've been playing games with my nieces is that no off-the-shelf game is ever going to be as good as a game that I've designed or I've tweaked specifically for them. Even within my own games, I wouldn't, like with the L deck, I wouldn't play one of those games off the shelf necessarily with one of my wee nieces. I'd be trying to say, okay, let's make a wee twist to this, or hey, let's try a simplified version of quintuple, and you're not ready for quintuple yet, and let's build it up into stages. I know that Haba's done a lot of good stuff in this way, where it says, okay, for the youngest people do this, for 5-year-olds do this, for 7-year-olds.
Nice.
And then there's that, I can't remember the name of the German company that prints about 10 different card games in a tuck box every year. It's ridiculous, but I hadn't heard of them, but I just got a bunch of their games for really cheap. But they've got a lovely thing where they say, okay, here's some ideas for earlier things. And let's take this as a last question before we go on and leave education, because this seems like something that we could talk for another couple of hours about. Has there been a game that you thought would be great in the classroom, but for whatever reason actually turns out to not work particularly well?
I'm trying to have a little think about that and what would be. I mean, there's some games I think where I think, oh, that's a great mechanic that would be really good to teach a certain thing, but maybe the theme might not be appropriate. And I'm thinking of games like Flashpoint, which is a great game for teaching about grids and where things need to be cross coordinating, where things are going to be on the grid, because you roll the dice and it's like A9 and you have to find the locations, which is something you would teach in your coordinates lesson. But then I think, or maybe watching a house burn down isn't ideal for 9-year-olds, because they probably have some follow up to that, whereas a kind of magical-ish temple run is fine. So there's some games that I kind of have to second guess a little bit to think, okay, would that actually work, even though it's got something in it that I would like to teach? Is that the right game for it? But no, I haven't actually taken any games where I thought, that bombed. Usually they do all right. And most of them are pretty good at it. So I think it's pretty good. There's some games, again, there's educational games, weirdly, as we mentioned, we talked about game designers creating educational games. Those ones tend not to be the games the kids want to play. So I've got it's nicely put together. It's a little Matilda, like Royal Dahl Matilda spelling game. But the children won't gravitate towards it because that game sells itself as a spelling game. And they don't want to play games about spelling. But if they played, one of your games, Best, for example, which is, it's part of the game, but it's not, the point of it, I suppose, they're probably more engaged with something where it's a bit not sold that way. Because kids are clever like that. They don't want to feel like they're learning. It's very strange, but that's just part of it. And then there's that whole secret learning that needs to kind of go on a little bit, I think, in the background, that they're more excited about.
Yeah, for sure. The learning has to be a byproduct. And definitely at some point, I would love to, get some sort of teacher pack together to say, hey, here's how to use these games in the classroom, because especially some of the games that's actually since lockdown, I hadn't done this because of lockdown. I came up with Nano Muckle, Micro Muckle, and these games that everyone's able to play together and able to, it's like most flip and writes. It's a simultaneous, everyone's got the thing, but there's no sheets. You just write on a blank sheet of paper. So perfect. I might have to chat to you afterwards to see.
Yeah, for sure.
I can talk to you about.
We've even used games like Yogi and stuff, as I was mentioning with this boy who's speaking Spanish, just as a good way to get conversation going about different parts of the body and those sort of things. It's just really nice way to get there because you're physically moving, and again, it's about dexterity. And for those children that need a bit of practice on their motor skills, perfect, so there's that whole element as well, that you've got fine motor skills and full motor skills.
By the way, not right now, but at the end of the month when I am back in London, if anyone wants any, if you're teaching at a school and you want yogi, whether in English or in French, because maybe you want to teach French, and it's actually really nice to say, hey, cette carte sur l'épaule. And I know the word for shoulder just because of yogi, because I've played it this many times in France.
That's it. See, there it is. Yeah.
Sur le bras, sur le dos de la main. I think it's like the back of the hand is the dos de la main. Anyway, but you learn these things again and again, right, left, hand, arm, and so you get to know what these things are. And it's just, even though it's not full sentences, it's not, you must put this card on your right shoulder. It's this card on right shoulder, and very much not even imperative. It's not put this card on your right, it's just this card on right shoulder, trying to cut down every word that I could in the English version, and they kept
I bet you 9 times out of 10 you would have those children that had the lesson where they'd learnt the body parts by playing that game would remember those names of the body parts, rather than, you know, the other lesson that might occur, which is basically, you know, a sheet where they label on a piece of paper. And so once again, it talks about that different styles of learning, and actually a much more physical approach to learning. I feel a much more engaging approach to learning is the one that they're going to retain the information from.
But oh yeah, the thing that I was going to say is that if anyone wants to use it for social good, then please get in touch with me, and I do offer anything that I am able to continue getting that is in stock, so to speak. I will offer it at a very reduced price for educators and people that I consider that are people who are doing education for groups rather than just for their own offspring. Let me reframe that slightly. So I understand you might be educating your own child, but that, I'm not going to give you a massive discount just because of that. But, you know, if you're working in that sort of field, or if you're doing some sort of group thing, please get in touch and I will try and work out something for you. Let's talk about museums. And because you works with several museums on game-related exhibitions and events, and I don't really know what this means. So can you tell me what you mean by this?
Yeah, so during my kind of education sort of career, I did a little gap. I did 2 years where I kind of wanted to focus, because as I mentioned, I wanted to kind of go into the media side of teaching. And so I kind of left the classroom full time and went down to 2 days where I was teaching just music and media in a more local school. But on the other days, I was kind of either writing for myself, doing a bit of design work, or I was working in museums. So I started volunteering at the Bethnal Green Museum of Childhood, which is part of the V&A. And I just noticed that they had a new exhibition which is called Game Plan, which was just about to start there, which was a lovely exhibition it was a bit of a celebration of board games. And there's a lot to talk about with board games, but they got a good idea, a general gist of what was going on with games at the time. And so I was kind of in there at the right time to be discussing with them. And as quite a big board gamer myself, I was chatting with some of the people creating the exhibition. And I was also working at Drafts at the time as well. So I was had a bit of connections with them. So I was like, well, let's do a big board game event as part of this exhibition. And so we ran like a big night takeover at the museum where we had all the tables out and on the marble floor. And we had, I think, about 100+ people all turn up. And we just had a big kind of board game pop-up night in the museum, which was great fun. So from that, it kind of got me a little bit more involved in the kind of games and, also the drama side of things in museums. And so I kind of became a bit of a regular then. I was what was called an outside professional assistant, which means I wasn't employed, full-time by the museum, but I would be asked to do weird and wonderful little jobs for them. So I did like board game component jewelry making workshops for a little bit. That was fun. Where we'd make little meeple necklaces and all those bits and bobs. So that was good. And then when that exhibition kind of came to a close, then I started moving into, we had A Pirate's Life for Me. So once again, the moustache got me another job, and I ended up working in a show for that one. And we did 3 days with like 4 shows a day where I was Captain Putrid and living my best life aboard. They built like this giant ship in the exhibition.
I'm assuming he doesn't have to actually put any stink bombs on your person and douse yourself with this horrible putrid smell.
It was, by the end of 3 shows, I was pretty putrid So yeah, it was good. It was great fun, and it was a lovely exhibition to be part of. And after that, they had some more sleepovers, these magical experience where I played a wizard for a bit, and we did one sleepover. We were meant to be doing another one literally the week after lockdown happened, so that kind of obviously got closed down. But just before that, they were thinking about their next exhibition, which is going to be about they're revisiting games. So this is, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about this really, but I'm just going to say what I know, and I'm sure it's okay. But they've got another games exhibition coming to the V&A, which I think is going to be opening when the museum's, it's having a refurb at the moment. So the Museum of Childhood is going to be reopening, I think, at the end of this year. I'm hopeful, maybe sooner if we're lucky. But one of their exhibitions is going to be, again, a revisit of games. And that's going to be, they were focusing more on role-playing games. And when I heard about this, I was like, okay, well, what do we know about role-playing games already? Do you want me to run a session for you? So most of the people who were involved in the exhibition hadn't really had much experience of playing Dungeons and Dragons or any of those RPGs before. So I had the lovely day where I took a morning off of my usual school job and was like, hey, I'm going to go do this weird thing at the museum. And so I ran a D&D session for all the exhibition designers and the people, the staff at the museum who were going to be involved in the exhibition, which was just the most fun time.
Right. Sorry, teachers can just take a day
They're
off?
not meant to. No, they're not meant to. But I have a very forgiving school that know I like doing weird and wacky projects, and they're very understanding of that because they know that
so
that's what drives me.
Who teaches this? Then do they get to substitute teacher or?
Yeah, well, I work at a very small school. It's only one form entry, so either one of the head teachers, we've got a head and a deputy, who are happy to step in, or sometimes TAs will just take the morning and work their magic. So amazing. Yeah, I was very lucky, very lucky. So that was great. That was a really nice. I think it was an afternoon in the end. Yeah, an afternoon where I got to go and play D&D with a bunch of exhibition staff at the Museum of Childhood.
Resident experts of role-playing games.
Yeah, just roll out your geek for hire. So that's been great. And again, the sort of educational side of things has come into play a little bit there, and how I was talking about how I've been using RPGs in the classroom as well, which they were obviously intrigued about. And I think more and more of that's slowly happening. There are some great groups across the world, mostly in America, it seems, at the moment, but it's slowly coming into Europe, which are using D&D in education settings. I think there is a site which is D&D Classroom or something like that, D&D Education, I think it's called, and they are pushing that. It's mostly secondary schools and that sort of style stuff, because it all seems to, no one does argue with Captain Future. Hey, show them the hook, that's enough. So that's been really nice to see that kind of rolling in. So kind of enlighten them a bit about how D&D is changing and why it's become so popular over the last sort of decade as well.
I mean, that just sounds, all amazing. And again, we could talk about, I know I talked about Holly Gramazio a while back, who used to run, Now Play This, tea festival that's in London.
Oh, yes.
This was my podcast, and Holly Gramazio, lovely person, and we chatted about curation of games, because there's so much that goes into this with selecting how do we present these, how do we think about what's going to be relevant to the audience, because this is a very different thing where, yes, it's about education, but it's about education of the thing itself rather than using the thing to educate, which is a completely different thing, but still has some relationship, of course.
Yeah, well, the Now Play This was phenomenal. I mean, I didn't get to as much as I would have liked to, but I did go to the Summit for Intergalactic Knowledge, which was
you mean this
so
year?
Good. So good.
I really wanted to go to more. I wanted to go to that, but I was having a rough day and I didn't feel up to doing that. Also, anyway, but
I think that was when I started to feel like, okay, well, we've gone through board games, we've gone through RPGs, both seem to be having quite an impact. And as I've mentioned, it's about immersion, right? Okay, and engaging with them. And so I think, like, going to that LARP, which so Summit for Interactive Knowledge was a LARP, essentially trying to remove ourselves a bit from being human, and we all were aliens for the day. And then
LARP is normally live action role playing game where if you move your hand, then that's like your character is moving the hand. So if my character wants to punch David, then I would be like, boom. And I'm not going to actually punch David with force, but we are going to do a sort of wrestling type thing. But so obviously there is quite often bits beforehand to say this is what you're getting into. Make sure that you're comfortable with this. In a LARP, it might be okay. In this, this requires some intimacy. We are going to touch people on the hands, and on the shoulders, but no further up. Do not, and you kind of set certain rules and boundaries. and check, okay, is everyone okay with that? But how does that relate to a thing? Were you role-playing a Skype call, essentially? Were you
So
like
it
a
was
webinar?
It was my only experience of LARP before this was the traditional, like what we would know as fantasy LARP, okay, running around the
Oh, the
woods,
buffer
dressed as the
LARP, where
goblin.
you're
Yeah,
speaking other
buffer.
people.
So I had just gone, and we were making a little documentary about, love through LARP, basically, where some people had met through LARP and the kind of relationship that bloomed through that. And so I said, well, I'm going to get involved as much as I can. So we were monstering for the day, which is basically where you get a bunch of costumes put on you and you run around in the woods being the monsters that the regular adventurers are fighting. So you're going to take quite a lot of the blows that day. So I think I was an orc and a skeleton for most of that day and had a great time. And that was my only really experience of LARP. And so I was like, well, how's this going to work differently? This is a LARP experience, but all via Zoom. And when it's not fantasy, it's all kind of science fiction, really. But the idea was, and I didn't really know what I was sort of going in for, just that I was very excited to have a go. So it was that we were all aliens. So everyone was in costume as aliens, and we were making the Zoom geometry, which was basically like a summit for knowledge, is what it was. So we were sharing information about our planets and how we could use the information from our planets to maybe help the human race on Earth, because they seem to be taking this very destructive path, and things look like they're about to, implode. So we were basically going around and just explaining what we do on our planet. So everyone kind of created their backstories and their living, what life was like on their planet. So I was Sploose from Splutopia, and it was talking about how trying to impart skills and knowledge onto the humans, essentially. So we were a group of aliens discussing solutions to human problems, and it was a fascinating way to spend 3 hours. I absolutely loved it. It was really well run, and there was lots of kind of almost meditations and moments, and it was expertly done by the 3 people running it. So I was very, very impressed. But equally, again, with that educator brain on, I was thinking, oh, this would be perfect for, as we all know, like climate change is a huge part and is become taught now in schools pretty much, and we'll be discussing it. And so I was like, well, this is a perfect way for the children to get involved and remove a little bit of that human guilt that we're all feeling about being part of the problem, and take a step back and say, okay, well, rather than moping about it, let's look at solutions from an external point of view. And I think children are quite capable of that, being that we've obviously lots of talk now about this next generation being the ones that are going to be making serious change, hopefully, and with lots of young teenagers being actively involved. They're going to be pushing harder. So getting children thinking about it now and thinking about it in these very different perspectives, I think is probably going to help push things forward. And obviously we're all doing what we can, but it's now imparting that knowledge as much as we can onto the younger generations. And so I thought, like SICK, the Summit of Intellect Knowledge, was just a perfect way of getting that message across. You could do it as a school-wide thing, where each class is all dressed up as aliens for the day, school dinners are being served as space food, and children are discussing and thinking about possible solutions for some of the world's current problems. And then they share those, and essentially you beam those back out to the humans, which essentially you creating work, and that's artistic work, it's writing work, it's performance work, that you then kind of record and then send to Earth. So it's like collated, and you've got something to kind of show for the day. And I think what a wonderful way to spend 3 hours. So I'm now trying to bring that in. I'm talking with the game designers about bringing that to the school as a really interesting new way of teaching about climate change and solutions to it.
Oh, that is fantastic, and it's great to hear that it went well. And you say that you didn't manage to actually engage in much else for Now Play This 2021, but there is so much good stuff going on, and I'm really looking forward to when it's a physical thing again, because I remember a couple of years ago when there was a karaoke machine that has, did you see this one, that had algorithmically generated words? So instead, it had words that would rhyme with the real words. So instead of, for example, I can't think, I'm actually drawing a blank of a song, run out the front door like a ghost, it might say, bun shout, dear, dunt, gore. It would be like nonsensical words. Just every single word would be trying to be this similar number of syllables and somehow rhyming with it. And yeah,
That sounds so good. Yeah, it's going to be a treat getting back to these sort of events. I'm sure everyone's like missing
but,
the conventions,
but
and
it's not
whilst
just about
it's
the
interesting.
algorithm, even though like I thought that was great, and that if it was available online, like I would just be playing that over and over. But it's about having the people around, having that performance, having that karaoke experience. And for this thing, that was in a room where they dressed it up. They had all the streamers coming down and like a soft light, and so it felt like a I don't know, a slightly it kind of really had that karaoke vibe. And Chits and Giggles, Ross is just saying awesome
Ross
to
is
the
up there,
whole
get a bit
summit
of karaoke
for
on.
intergalactic knowledge. But it has been lovely chatting to you. I want to be respectful of your time, but if you ever want to come on again, like maybe on a Saturday when you might not, let's organize something and maybe get some other people who are doing some sort of educational work, and let's nail down into these topics a little bit more, because there's definitely loads more that we could have chatted about. We did chat about so much, of course. We talked about you being, in your own estimation, 1/12 of Chits and Giggles. We talked about the number 111 being lucky, apparently called a Nelson.
I'm going to find out what this is all about.
I am going to investigate it as well after the show. I'm going to, we talked about triskaidekaphobia and, you know, how David's like, just embrace the thing that everyone fears. Like, would you say that, actually, talking about that, would you say that you're a xenophiliac? You know, someone who loves difference and loves change?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is
what
pushes us forward, right? It's embracing change. So I think I'm all for it.
Awesome. We talked about foraging. We talked about forest walks. We talked about the fact that you could call East London Essex. You know, a rose is a rose, but, you know, Essex is not a rose. They are clearly two different things. One is a place, one is a flower. But we talked about plastic item meeples. We talked about Jurassic Park, the book, that it's intimidated you, but then 20 years later, you're like, wow, I've got all this extra bonus content, and having that little, I guess, extra added depth to the story. We talked about Magic the Gathering, falling in love with merfolk, and presumably you always want to play the merfolk, although you did say you will play with either deck, merfolk or goblins.
I'm a big goblins fan as well. Mostly in any RPGs, I will play some sort of goblin, or goblins will appear. So either or, merfolk or goblins, depending on the location.
Nice. We talked about Dynogenics. We talked about your own dinosaur game, which, it's difficult with thinking we should. Yeah, once all this is done, you know what? I'll invite you. Let's do like a big playtest thing on Saturday. And we talked about cooking. Like, Ross, you've not let us know, Ross, if you're up for this. So I'm not, but, you know, even if Ross, fingers crossed, Ross is up for it. I think that if we say Ross's name publicly and kind of we can apply peer pressure, then maybe it'll happen. But even if us two are up for it, then I think we might be able to get. We only need like 3 people to make it work. I think.
Sounds perfect.
Like 2 feels a slightly, I don't know. 2 feels like it might be a little bit lonely, but 3, okay.
3's up there, so I think it sounds good. I'm sure we'll get some more crowds in for this. I think we'll get to a decent. I think we'll get to 6+ is what I'm saying is going to happen.
Wow, that is quite
a banquet.
So, we talked about Butterfly Wars, the unpublished game by Matthew Puffett, I want to say. Matt Puffett, amazing game designer, currently unpublished, but we talked about components, we talked about racing on the street, smacking your head, getting chalk in your face. We talked about pick and mixes, helping yourself. We talked about studying films and working in the cinema until you're scraping a bit and thinking, what am I doing with my life? I'm going to go off for some teacher training. And then starting up as a teacher until you just got a job and fell in love with it. We talked about zombies, ! We talked about Zombicide. We talked about King Domino, the joy of building things, and multiplication. We talked about Ink and Gold, Push Your Luck, and Division. and it makes it real because you're actually sharing these things around. We talked about having some discussion after the game about the kinesthetic joy of these things, about Rory's story cubes and RPGs, allowing everyone to bring something to the table, about the Lorax, teaching the joy of losing. You know, it's not that you want to lose. It's not like losing is better than winning. It's just that there was joy in the game despite you losing. But yeah, sometimes there is actually joy in saying, you know what, I prefer the fact that I lost because that means that there's something more to fight for. Whereas if you're winning all the time,
Rhino here is a perfect example of that, right? Being the loser is the best bit of that game because you are the one who gets to cause the crumble. And I think like there's a joy in that. Like, you know, Jenga, which I know Russell's least favorite game in the world, but Jenga, the beauty is being that loser because no one really cares if they want to lose Jenga, right? But being the person that caused it is kind of the fun part. You're the one who gets that adrenaline hit as you just watch it go.
That's an interesting perspective. I think that we should have let me actually make a note. At some point, let's have a topic about the joy of losing, because I would disagree with the thing of Jenga, but I don't disagree strongly. But I just think there's a very nuanced argument there, which would probably take us, you know, maybe half an hour to talk about exactly that balance between all the emotions that's running through your head. Adron Ward does say, yes, we did talk about some rather magnificent facial hair. And Russ is wanting a clarification on what we talked about. So, I mean, it could be like a pre-recorded video, and I hear that, you know, there are at least two people, you know, one person there and one person, let me move my camera, one person there and one person there, who do some pre-recorded video content. But, you know, I'm not going to ask you to do all the editing because that's asking you too much. But I was thinking it could be just, hey, this is our stream and we stream the actual meal. So we stream the partaking in the meal. So it's kind of like, hey, we're having a meal together. We're going to chat about this. We have maybe a camera set up over the table, a camera with everyone on it. And that was my kind of thought. But we could slightly edit the thing. Honestly, it's an excuse to, cook for each other and play games. Like, it's a game night kind of thing. And then we cook a meal, we chat, and then we play a game and stream the game. And
what more could you want? Sounds glorious.
Anyway, we talked about, having built something. We talked about...
Hey! There it is. There it is. He's done it.
Trying to one-up tea-and-a-chitchat, asks Rob. But Le Adder Noir, I am going to Le Adder Noir give you some number of points. I don't know how many points it should be, like 250 points. There you go.
Wow. Deserved.
Oh, wait, I posted that on Facebook rather than Twitch. Le Adder Noir, 250. There you go. So, congratulations on... Yeah, just respect. That is the pun of the stream. I just wait. Chips and griddles.
Oh.
It should be chips and griddles, surely. I do like For Chits and Giggles. I don't know. I don't agree that one's necessarily better than the other. I think they're both brilliant. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I think there's a beautiful in the simplicity of Chips and Giggles. It just grabs me instantly.
No, because then there's no...
Oh, we're getting into the semantics. Here they are.
Yeah, but people will...
We'll have both. Just have both.
We'll work it out. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion. I like the fact that, okay, for a board game cafe, I can, but would Chits and Griddles, someone who's coming by, would even know what that means? Because really it's a play on the channel name, which is kind of niche, let's be honest. I mean, surely if you were to actually make a board game cafe, you would want to reach outside, but you could do chits and
Food for
chips.
thought there. Yeah.
And I'm saying the channel is not worldwide famous. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there is clearly some international fame. I'm just saying that there's not enough local fame, potentially. Like, if you were to open a board game cafe, anyway, we weren't... I still call it the pun of the stream because, frankly, Monique didn't come onto the stream and say it. So there you go. I'm still declaring it the pun of the stream. Anyway, we talked about self-expression. We talked about team-free. We talked about avoiding themes like houses burning up, certain topics. Talking about game plan. We talked about summits of international knowledge, and then I started recapping stuff, and then I finished recapping stuff, and then I started whittering on and looking at David in a vague attempt to maybe have David stop me at some point, and then I put up the thing down below, and this is my links. So if you want to check me out, then you can check me out most places as Stuff by Bez. Of course, that includes stuffbybez.com, stuffbybez.bigcartel.com, Instagram.com/stuffbybez, Twitter.com/stuffbybez, Twitch.tv/stuffbybez, where I am streaming for the next 66 days. Number 66. The next 66 days, and then I'll stop for a few weeks because I've decided that's where I'm going. 100 days streaming, and then like 3 weeks break for the morning streams, and then I'll carry on until I decide that I need another plan. YouTube.com/stuffbybez has all the old episodes, and please do join my Discord, stuffbybez.com/Discord. You can join there to talk, share things that you're making, share your own channels, or share pictures of cats. You know, it was kind of in an attempt to vaguely simulate, I don't know if you remember, I used to have a wall where people could post pictures of cats.
You still have all those pictures?
I do all have all of those pictures in a box. Amazing. Unfortunately, they've not been seen by anyone for a wee bit of time. And I decided that UK Games Expo 2019 would be the last time, because it was just too many cats. It was like way over 1,000 cat pictures.
Whoa.
It took like 15 hours divided amongst people. So it took about 3 and a bit people, 5 hours to set up before UK Games Expo. Ooh. And then at UK Games Expo, I got another 600 plus cats. And so I don't fancy doing that job every time I go to a thing.
No, fair enough.
Yeah, I just want to say massive thanks to everyone here. And yeah, where do you like to be found? Let me bring up the wee banner. So where do you like to be found? And tell us about this RPG Classroom.
Yeah, so RPG Classroom is where I'm putting some of my thoughts about this. I had a little break from it over the last year during the pandemic, couldn't put it together, but I'm back on it now. So that's where I'm putting some of the thoughts we talked about today, basically, about how I'm using RPGs and a little bit of board games in the classroom, as well as my own thoughts about RPGing. So that's a really good one if you're thinking about using board games or RPGs in the classroom to check out. And there's loads of great resources and links on there that you can also use to find more information about it. So that's a good one. And of course, there's For Chits and Giggles, which myself and Russell, mostly Russell, are involved with. And Russell, I think, is, he's twitching loads at the moment, so it's definitely worth checking out all of his bits and bobs because they're always fun. His Mario Mondays are wild and definitely worth a peek. So they're good fun. And then every now and again, we get to have a little stream together too. So you'll find me on there every now and again as well.
When you're not too tired out by your teaching gig.
Yeah, so that's been the balancing act between it is like, and probably why I've, you know, brought board game into the classroom as well a little bit more, is because I'm not getting as much time to play board games outside, and so share that love with the children and then see the impact of it as well. It's a win-win. So that's been really good. But yeah, me and Russell get to game. We don't stream all the time, obviously, but it's nice to catch up with Russell when we do get the chance. We're currently playing through Pandemic, which is, you know, ironic. So we're working our way through season 2 of Pandemic Legacy, which is not being streamed, but we're having a wonderful time all the same.
Lovely. And yeah, again, thank you, David, and thank you to all you kinds of wonderful people, wherever you are, you know, on the other side of the screen. Have you heard that show, Conversations with People Who Hate Me? It is a slightly hyperbolic thing, because the people know it's basically someone who said something mean on the internet, and then you have the conversation to say, why did you say that? And not quite often, sometimes it's, hey, we actually disagree and there's no way to reconcile this, but we're both, you know, humans, and we can respect that. And one thing that's always said at the end of that is, remember, there's a human on the other side of the screen. And I think more than ever nowadays, because this is the main source of social interaction I have. So I want to thank you, everyone, genuinely, everyone who's been watching, who's been conversing live, Rob, Ladder Noir, Chits and Giggles, Ross, knows, everyone who popped in earlier. I'm not going to, I don't know if Nicholas is still watching, and Mike and CD, and just everyone whose name I've forgotten, for which I apologize. And even if those people who are lurking, that's, I just see you as a little number, and it's like, oh, there's that many people watching. And it's kind of like being around people when you can't be around people. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that's definitely why I stream. So thank you so much, everyone. No, thank you for being here. Thank you for being such lovely individuals. Even though I've never met you, Ladder Noir, you seem really cool based on the few times that you've popped in. And Ross, you know, I've literally given you hugs and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure we must have done high fives. I'm trying to think of, but yeah, we've played games together, and you know, you're also a lovely individual. Everyone here is lovely as far as I know. I mean, hopefully there's no, secret megalomaniacal plans to destroy the world. And this is the final part before I wrap up, where I say, over to you. What are you up to? You can share anything you want to. So is there anything that you want to share? Anything that you are trying to get done and you want a bit of outside motivation for? Anything that you're looking forward to doing? I myself, I'm going to check in with everyone else in the Accountability Buddy Club, where we kind of give ourselves goal, and I know some people are just about walking outside. I'm going to, you know, take it relatively easy. Last month I managed to be somewhat healthy. This month I'm going to not bother about the eating so much. I'm going to eat what I want. And I'm not going to go crazy. It's not like I'm going to have kilos of chocolates every day, much as
chocolate eggs for breakfast every day.
I did have over a kilo of chocolates every day for half a year. And then I realized at the end of it that I will gain weight, and I can't do this. And that is a bit sad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We can't eat all the things we would like to eat. We have to. Talking of food, Rob has just lit the pizza oven. They have an actual pizza oven in the house. Whoa. So we'll be having pizza for lunch. Looking forward to that. That sounds amazing.
I'll come over to that. Sounds great. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So obviously, it'd be good if people want to ask more questions. You can contact me through the RPG Classroom site. So on there, feel free to drop by. I've also got rolltolearn@gmail.com, which is my kind of email I use for the education stuff. So feel free to ask any more questions if you are a teacher or you know teachers who would like to get involved in adding that into the classroom, board games or RPGs or LARP. Give me a shout, because I'd love to chat. So there's that bit. Equally, Baz, I know you're writing a book now. that's happening, and I'm on a similar path.
Yes.
I'm trying to write something, so I would love to chat more about that as well. And equally, this accountability club sounds good in a way of trying to motivate me, because, like many writers, I'm great starting, not so good at finishing. So it would be good to have that. Like,
just so
hey,
we channel in my Discord, and then if you join, I give you a little role. So
perfect.
Basically, anyone can ping, hey, at accountability buddies, because that way. I learned a lot from Discord. Shouts out to Ross, Ross More Games Please, who's just done a great job with all the roles. And I learned a lot about Discord, where it's, oh yeah, you could do this and do at these people and at these people. And yeah, and so, but I actually stuck in the link to my Board Game Geek blog, where what I've done, I don't know if you saw this, to keep myself accountable, is I'm trying to do 500 words every day. And honestly, this has been going less than a week, but I wrote more in the past week than I wrote in the month beforehand. Because beforehand, it was like, oh my God, what do I write? Okay, I've written the table. I've written like 1.5 pages. Okay, I've managed to write. And then there's not the pressure to do it. But once I actually had that first page and I had people clicking the little fun button, and there's like a couple of people who... someone called Adorable Rocket that I don't know, and Martin, who I actually know in real life, who are actually commenting sometimes, and that makes me feel, okay, someone's reading it. It makes it feel valuable. And so this is the very first draft. It's probably not the best way to read a book, which probably works in my favor, because it means that, hey, later on I can still sell the book. But hopefully it's of interest enough that you will want to read what I've written. But yeah, please join the Discord if you want. Remember, stuffbybez.com/Discord. But yeah, is there anything else that people would like to chat about? I am going to play some more Pluto tonight. We agreed that as a family. Also, I'm going to play some Dinosaurs Love Spicy Pies, which is a game by myself, Rita Modal, who made Men at Work, and Tiz Creel, my designer for Seize the Power. And we work together online for Dinosaurs Love Spicy Pies, and I'm playing it hopefully. Yesterday, my parents, they've got some issues. They needed an extended nap, but yeah, today, assuming they're waking up by 3 p.m. off from their afternoon nap, I should point out they go to sleep again at 1 p.m. But assuming they're awake, we'll have a wee playtest, which I'm really looking forward to.
It's going to be great. Yeah, off to play my first, I think, RPG with real people for the first time in a year, for a little garden get-together. So I'm looking forward to some garden gaming. It's going to be a strange and wonderful experience. So that's off this afternoon. Yeah, it's going to be great.
If you want to check out my next streams, please do check out that link, where it will tell you that tomorrow I am chatting with Matthew Dunstan and Matthew Dunstan, Rita Modal, and Alan Paul, talking about development. In the evening, every week on Tuesday at 8 p.m. UK time, I play for exactly 1 hour Nanomuckle. Well, we play different games each week, but we play exactly from 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. If you want to jump in on video, then let me know. And if you want to jump in on chats, you would be also obviously welcome to that. Wednesday, I'll be making games on my own. Thursday, we'll be meeting a translator who lives in Japan, who's an American doing English-Japanese translations. Friday is always a Friendly Friday forum. Literally anyone can just jump into video, as long as I know you. And when I say literally anyone, yeah, you know what? I'm going to stand by that, because even if you're a bit of a jerk, you have the potential to not be a jerk. I'm not saying anyone here is a jerk, but hypothetically, if there was a jerk, they could stop being a jerk. And then if I got to know them, I'm like, yeah, you're totally not a jerk, then you could jump on. And it's just like a free-for-all. And if I already know you in real life, or if you've been on the stream a few times and you feel like, yeah, I want to jump on and talk about how I'm getting on, or for some reason, and chat for 20, 30 minutes, then that is your opportunity. Saturday, I'm mentoring Dutch Yoda. Sunday, I have Serenity from Project Sinise to chat about Netrunner that I'm super excited about. I know virtually nothing about Netrunner. I played it once, and I don't know much about how it went from Fantasy Flight Games to then become something that they are doing. So I'm really hoping that they can shed a bit of light on that, because that seems to be information that I can't really find on the internet. So that's going to be Sunday anyway. If that all sounds interesting, share, spread the word. I am not going to be doing, sometimes we have an after party with words on stream. Probably not going to do that today. I'm going to go off, and I've not eaten breakfast yet, so I'm going to go do that. We will raid someone. Let me actually quickly see who is. Oh, we've got Nerds of the West. We've actually got a board gamer. That Smashing Star Realms Arena. Yeah.
Perfect.
So yes, Nerds of the West. Let me double. Okay, this looks cool. Yep. They seem to be playing Star Realms on the digital application. So if that's of interest to you, then join in the raid and feel free to copy paste some or all of this raid message. And that leads me to my final section. Do you have anything left to say?
Parv, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to let's have another natter soon. It'd be a treat. Can't wait for Come Down With Me Board Game Edition for whatever name we decide, whatever it's going to be.
It should be like, maybe the pun should be based on Come Dine With Me.
Oh, right, that's something we're going to have to say food for thought.
Come Game With Me? No, that's not very good. Game me to the moon, and let me game among the stars. Let us see what life is like when we are making cars. In Kanban, that's what we do. In Agricola, make sure you've got food. We might play some light games, and maybe we'll play some Euros. I don't know what other people will pick, but I will love whatever. Those David and Ross and whoever else joins in, come dice with me. Oh, I like that. That is really good.
That's
okay.
Good.
That is really, really good. Okay, I know that I already handed out the points, but I'm like handing out more points for this cardboard. You are also, this is, yeah, just amazing.
Swooped in with that. Glorious.
Yeah. Come dice with me.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Anyway, so are you ready for the bye-bye song?
Oh, there's a bye-bye. Oh, I can't wait. Yes, I've got my kazoo ready.
You've not watched any of the previous shows.
I've not got my kazoo ready.
They are pretty long. I totally understand. It's all good. Bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now, oh no!
I dropped my kazoo.
And now, it's time to go. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
That was amazing. Best outro ever. Bye-bye.
Cheerio, one and all.
Bye-bye. Okay. Oh, thank you for kazooing along. And I will end the broadcast. Don't know what that means. Know what that means?
That's a good one, though. Hurrah to you too.
Yeah, assuming that it means bye-bye in another language. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.